The story begins when an average restaurant cook gets summoned to save an isekai world with other heroes. A hooded mage quickly steps up to check the stats of all the heroes, getting impressed by a legendary holy swordsman. Then, he finds 2 expert witches with the power to control powerful elements. And finally, he focuses on Mr. Mukoda, who possesses the awe-inspiring talent of ordering online groceries. Mukoda asks if he has any other skill, but the mage shakes his head, sealing his fate as a magical delivery boy. He tells Mukoda to visit the king to learn about his mission. In the king's room, the fat old monarch tells the heroes to find the demon lord, who is causing trouble for his kingdom of Reincarnated. As the king reveals that the demon lord can send the heroes back, the other heroes quickly agree to fight for him, while Mukoda feels suspicious of his whole story. He asks the old man if he can sit this adventure out and live like the commoner he is, and the king sends him away with some gold coins. Afterward, he heads out to the city, where everyone stares at his weird corporate wage slave suit. Mukoda changes his outfit and rents a room where he checks his stats to learn that he also has a magic storage and appraisal skill. Then, he uses his grocery skill, which opens a holographic online store. He then inserts some money into the screen and buys some quick food to keep him going, thinking that he can make good money as a chef with this skill to leave the plain country. The next morning, Mukoda rushes to catch a carriage to the town of Keels. On the way there, he asks a merchant what he's going to sell, who tells him that he's going to sell a very precious item called soap. Mukoda feels surprised that soap is so precious and asks the man if he stores his goods in a magic storage. However, the merchant tells him that the magic storage skill is very rare, so he has to carry everything around. Then, Mukoda asks him about the appraisal skill and learns that it's a legendary skill that's practically unheard of. The merchant wonders why he's so interested in these rare skills, but Mukoda claims that he was just dreaming. Then, the merchant tells Mukoda that he made a good call going to a border town because the kingdom is soon planning to seal its borders. Once Mukoda gets to Keels, he finds out that the kingdom has banned further carriage services, and a few soldiers tell him that the king is always trying to start wars without reason. Mukoda feels glad that he decided to leave the dangerous country, but wonders how to escape without a ride. He visits an adventurer's guild and asks for some bodyguards, and the receptionist tells him he'll need to offer 7 gold coins for his difficult request. Mukoda feels surprised by the price, but decides it's better to pay than get trapped in a war-torn country. The receptionist accepts his payment and introduces him to the adventurer Werner, who tells him that his party is ready to leave the next morning. The next day, Mukoda sets out for the kingdom of Venin with Werner's party, and they take a break after traveling some distance. As Mukoda sets up his kitchen to cook, the adventurers feel surprised by his magical storage and foreign equipment. He serves them some fresh sandwiches, which they all find incredibly delicious. Werner feels guilty for getting luxurious food for free, but Mukoda tells him it's not a big deal for him. Seeing his friendly response, Werner nods and promises not to poke his nose into Mukoda's secrets. Afterward, the group runs into some bug monsters on the way. Mukoda jumps in fear as a bunch of bug guts land near him, and a party member informs Werner that there's an angry boar up ahead. Werner's team turns the boar into a bunch of pork chops, and Mukoda stores all its meat in his magic storage. Then, he prepares some special pork soup for them, and the team feels their energy recharging from the hearty food. Mukoda wonders why his food is restoring their energy, since he just cooked a normal soup for them. He uses his appraisal skill to check everyone, and spits out his own soup, shocked that his food actually is giving the adventurers a huge stat buff. Thinking that his otherworldly ingredients could also have hidden side effects, Mukoda decides to keep his food sources secret to avoid being turned into a slave. While everyone chows away, a pair of green eyes silently stalks them in the night. The next day, Mukoda cooks everyone a heavy dish of fried pork, which they instantly devour. However, their joy is short-lived as the legendary Fenrir beast appears behind Mukoda. The giant wolf uses its aura points to threaten Mukoda into giving it food, but loses them all as it starts chomping on them like a starving puppy. Mukoda panics while quickly whipping up more batches of meat to satisfy the hungry dog. After emptying all the stocks of Mukoda's food mart, Fenrir stops eating and tells Mukoda that he's surprised he could satisfy it with such a small amount of food. Fenrir tells the exhausted cook that it wants to form a contract with him, but Mukoda feels worried about befriending such a dangerous creature. He tries to decline Fenrir's Fenrir's offer, but the wolf keeps interrupting him, making it clear that he isn't asking for his consent. Mukoda then asks Werner and his scared teammates if it's a good idea to trust the wolf, and finally accepts Fenrir's offer as they nod their heads. Fenrir then calls over Mukoda and presses its head against him, which creates a glowing light that signs their partnership contract. Once the contact is done, Fenrir proudly sits down to rest and orders Mukoda to cook 3 meals for him every day, leaving him completely stunned. Then, Fenrir asks for a new nickname, and Mukoda gives it a dog name like Bob. However, the wolf feels offended that it's getting treated like a house pet and settles for the name Fel. After settling down from their shock, the group starts traveling again, and everyone wonders how they'll enter the border with the massive beast following them. Werner thinks that the Venan royalty will be all over Mukoda, who feels frustrated that he's attracting so much attention. Later, they all settle down for lunch, and Fenrir demands his portion from Mukoda. He tells the big wolf to get its own meat since he doesn't have any ingredients left, and Fel obediently leaves to hunt. Werner's team is surprised that Mukoda can casually order a legendary beast around, but he reminds them that it's only fair that Fel gets the ingredients he wants to eat. Soon, Fel returns with a powerful B-rank rock bird that Werner's party can only dream of touching. Mukoda asks Fel if he can keep the other parts of the bird, and the wolf tells him he can sell everything else as long as the meat ends up in his belly. With his approval, the team skins the bird, and Mukoda cooks the party's lunch. Fel starts getting impatient that he has to wait, but Mukoda reminds him that his giant portions take the longest to cook. After finishing lunch, everyone starts moving towards the border. Mukoda's teammates wonder how the kingdom will react to Fel, who is rumored to have destroyed an entire country out of rage when they finally reach Venan. Mukoda notices the border guards panicking because of Fel, and Werner leaves to explain their situation to them. However, they all end up getting detained by the border guards. The guard captain asks if Fel truly is under Mukoda's control, who asks his pet to explain that he doesn't mean any harm. Fel tells the captain that he won't attack the Venan kingdom if they don't harm his master. So the captain finally allows everyone to enter. Once they're in, Werner warns Mukoda that the Venan kingdom will investigate him because of his extraordinary companion. Mukoda feels upset to get so much attention, but says that he wants to travel the world for sightseeing anyway. So Werner tells him to get an adventurer or merchant license. Mukoda thinks about becoming a merchant, but a party member reminds him that he needs the Adventurer Guild's services to butcher all the monster Fenrir hunts. However, the mage tells Mukoda that he can just register in both guilds at the same time before they start heading into town. Soon, an annoying servant tries to invite Mukoda to meet his master, and he tries to refuse. However, the servant keeps pestering him to come along, so Fel threatens to obliterate his master's entire bloodline, which finally sends him running away. Werner thinks that the noble family might take action against Mukoda, but the mage reminds him that even the entire Venan army can't defeat Fel. One team member thinks that only a dragon can fight as Fel's equal, and the Fenrir nods, saying that his last fight with a dragon was an even match. After Werner's team finishes glazing Fel, he asks Mukoda to sign their job request completion, and he writes his name on the paper. Werner tells him that they'll go their own ways from here, and they say goodbye to each other. Once they all leave, Mukoda walks to the Merchant Guild, planning to sell the loot from Fel's hunts over there. As he walks into the guild, everyone feels stunned by the oversized husky following him. He asks the attendant for registration, and she explains that the Merchant Guild is independent of any country. Then, she informs Mukoda that the guild has 5 ranks from iron to mithril, before giving him an iron card to set up his portable food stall. Mukoda takes the card and leaves after telling the receptionist that he'll come back to sell his loot to her. Outside, he parks his wolf in a stable while making lunch for both of them. This time, Mukoda puts some steak sauce in Fel's meat, which he enjoys a lot. Then, Mukoda puts a different sauce on the next serving, and Fel gets surprised that the same meat can taste so different with just another sauce. He tries a bunch of different sauces before settling for a nice garlic sauce. After feeding his partner, Mukoda makes a bowl of steak rice for himself and starts to eat, but Fel also gets interested in the rice. Fel enjoys the rice as well, which leaves Mukoda to make some more for his own. He feels grateful that the online delivery skill lets him enjoy good food in a boring world, and heads to bed after dinner. dinner. Then, Mukoda remembers to prepare something before going to sleep. The next day, Mukoda heads back to the Merchant Guild, where he shows the receptionist his loot. She takes a look inside the bag and immediately leaves after seeing its content. As Mukoda wonders if he made a mistake, the receptionist soon returns and takes him to a private room, where the guild master reveals that his salt and pepper are of such high quality that they can sell them to the royal family. The guild master offers to buy all of Mukoda's goods and asks where he got them from, but he awkwardly tries to keep his secret. Noticing Mukoda's hesitation, the guild master stops asking and offers 10 gold coins for his goods. Mukoda is shocked, since he bought the spices for only a few copper coins, but the guild master mistakes his silence for dissatisfaction with the price. He raises his offer to 15 gold coins for everything, and Mukoda finally accepts, realizing he's discovered an infinite money glitch. After getting the gold coins, Mukoda heads for the Adventurers Guild and begins registering himself. The receptionist gives him the lowest G rank card before explaining that he needs to complete one quest per month if he wants to keep his membership. He nods and accepts an easy-looking quest to gather some medicinal flowers for the month. A few days later, Mukoda goes outside the inn and stretches his arms, ready to gather herbs for the quest. Watching him get ready without a care, Fel reminds him that he wants breakfast before they go out. After breakfast, Mukoda goes out to his quest location with Fel, who complains that breakfast wasn't enough to fill him. Mukoda tells him to hunt for meat while he gathers herbs, but Fel doesn't leave before activating a magic shield to protect him from monsters while he's gone. With the legendary dog gone, Mukoda uses his appraisal skill and starts picking the first herb he needs. He soon completes the quest requirements and picks some extra herbs as ingredients for his cooking. Then, Mukoda begins preparing lunch while waiting for Fel to come back. As he takes out his cooking set and orders some ground beef and sauces, Fel returns with another rock bird, saying that he left more monsters in the forest. Mukoda nods and continues cooking his ground beef pasta. Once it's done, Fel feels suspicious of the dangly noodles, but immediately gulps them down after tasting how good they are. Mukoda then gives Fel some cheese to add on top, feeling happy that he can still enjoy all the treats from his old world in this life. After lunch, they head to the forest to get Fel's meat, and Mukoda feels shocked by all the crazy monsters he has hunted. He asks Fel if it's okay to eat half-human monsters like orcs, but Fel explains that it's completely normal for humans to eat them. Mukoda nods before putting all the beasts in his storage and gets on Fel's back, who takes him on a roller coaster ride back home. Once they get back, Mukoda heads into the Adventurers Guild and hands the herbs to the receptionist, who feels surprised that he got so many on his first quest. After he asks her where to sell monster meat, she gets surprised that a weak man like him can hunt, but Mukoda explains that it was actually his guard dog's work. The receptionist nods, then sends Mukoda to the butcher, who gets shocked by the amount of meat he has and takes him to the back of the building. There, the butcher tells Mukoda there are rumors about him and Fel, before Mukoda shocks him with all the powerful beasts he has. The butcher tells him it'll take a while to process all the monsters, so Fel asks for some quick orc meat for the day's dinner. With the orc meat in hand, Mukoda plates some soft pork picadas with delicious meat sauce. Fel quickly digs in, but Mukoda still feels disgusted at the thought of eating orc meat. However, he quickly changes his moral code and inhales the premium pork after getting a taste. The next day, Mukoda goes to the butcher to get his meat. The butcher shows him all the meat before giving him over 200 gold coins for the other monster materials. Mukoda feels surprised, but the butcher reminds him that high-ranked monsters are precious loot. The butcher then gives him a magic crystal from an rank beast, before asking about the rumors that his legendary Fenrir is just a high-ranked great wolf. The butcher then laughs it off, thinking that Fel is the legendary beast for sure with his confidence, and Mukoda leaves with a new excuse to hide his pet's identity. To keep them both safe, Mukoda leaves the town and rests at a midway point outside. There, he asks Fel if he wants to order some gourmet food online, and quickly starts buying the food as Fel creates a waterfall drooling over all the options. Once the food arrives, Fel quickly swallows it all, and Mukoda gives him a final cut of precious Wagyu steak to enjoy. Fel thinks that the small meat is too pathetic, but realizes it tastes better than anything he's had before. Mukoda explains to him that Wagyu cows are specially raised to taste the best, which surprises Fel. He tells Mukoda that in their world, nobody farms animals animals on a large scale since they just eat monster meat. Once Fel finishes dinner, he tells Mukoda that he's feeling strong enough to defeat the ancient dragon he once fought. Mukoda checks his stats and realizes that his food gave Fel a 50% buff, and Fel leaves to use his power for more hunting. Mukoda feels worried to be alone at night, but Fel confidently tells him that his barrier is enough before leaving. After he leaves, Mukoda takes out a soft futon mattress and goes to sleep. Meanwhile, Fel runs through the forest and turns a rock bird into chicken drumsticks. Then, he fries a deer alive and rips through an entire horde of orcs. Before the orc general approaches him, Fel remains confident while facing the bulky monster and slays him with a single strike. But then, a fearsome chimera monster challenges him to steal the prey. Refusing to take the insult, Fel roars and unleashes a lightning spell that obliterates the chimera and takes the monsters back to Mukoda in the morning. Seeing the mountains of meat and a casually decimated chimera around him, Mukoda decides that it's the last time he ordered waju for Fel. The next day, Mukoda asks Fel how he hunts monsters, and the murder puppy tells him that he uses a combination of claws and magic. Mukoda feels excited to use magic, so he checks his stats and finds out that he has magic talent. He asks Fel how to use it, but he just tells him to think about whatever spell he wants to use. Mukoda grabs his head in frustration, realizing that a genius beast like Fel, who goes by intuition, can't teach him anything about the basics. With Fel's words in mind, he imagines a powerful fireball launching out of his hand, but makes himself look like a kid trying to use a kamehameha. Fel notices Mukoda's pathetic attempt and explains that he needs to let magical energy flow through his body first. He lets Mukoda feel his own body for the magic flow, and tells him to practice for the feel, which gets him pumped. However, he immediately gives up after his first real fireball dies out like a cheap candle. Fel tells Mukoda to get some magic practice with real monsters, but he wimps out and refuses to go. So Fel just grabs the cowardly chef to dump into the battlefield. He tosses Mukoda into a camp of goblins and leaves to hunt meat, knowing that his wimpy master won't fight if he's around to babysit him. While running away from the goblins, Mukoda throws a fireball at them, which hits one, but they continue gaining distance on him. Suddenly, Mukoda trips on a stone, and one of the goblins jumps to attack him, but Fel's barrier protects him. Inside the barrier's protection, Mukoda starts lobbing more fireballs at the goblins, and his final attack actually defeats a couple. However, he collapses from exhaustion and passes out, but Fel finally comes up to take him away. Later at night, Mukoda wakes up in a cold sweat but calms down after feeling safe. Fel praises him for his final fireball, but Mukoda starts crying because he threw him into such a dangerous place. Then, Fel notices that Mukoda leveled up. Before he gives him the body of the Goblin King, he asks Mukoda if the body has a magic stone he can sell for more waju meat, but the traumatized chef refuses to give him any more treats for the time being. Mukoda then gets up to prepare a normal dinner, but orders some bakery goods after falling down from exhaustion. Fel feels upset that he's not getting any meat, but he stops complaining after finding the bread delicious. After finishing his portion, Fel asks for more sweets, but Mukoda warns him that he'll get fat if he eats too much. However, the magic wolf confidently tells him that he's immune to poison and illnesses because he got a blessing from the goddess of wind, Ninrir. Mukoda feels jealous that Fel is so overpowered and starts praying to God to give him some buffs just like him. As his desperate screams ring out, a mysterious lady sits at a pond, smiling softly. The next day, Mukoda reaches another town, but the overgrown mutt behind him causes the people to panic. The border guards quickly surround Mukoda, but he explains to them that Fel is actually just his pet great wolf. Fel telepathically reminds Mukoda that he's not a great wolf, while the guards feel suspicious of him. After verifying his guild card, they tell Mukoda that he's allowed to enter their town, warning that if Fel causes trouble, Mukoda could get executed or sold into slavery as punishment. With this information in mind, Mukoda heads into the town and leaves Fel in a stable, while he goes out searching for a world map. He enters a library and gets interested in a magic book, but is surprised that books are expensive because paper is a rare material. Then, he asks the shopkeeper if he has a world map, and the old man gets angry that Mukoda thinks he has top secret FBI level information just lying around. Afterward, Mukoda decides to find a bigger library for his needs, but returns to his room after finding nothing. He goes back to Fel and orders some instant food for the hungry dog, which easily cheers it up. Afterward, Mukoda begins eating his own chicken and rice, but Fel, the legendary pig, starts drooling over that as well. The next day, as Mukoda explores the town, he bumps into some drunk adventurers near a pub. He enters the pub, feeling scared of all the tough adventurers around him, but talks to a party sitting together at a table. The party feels annoyed by Mukoda, but they all warm up to him after he treats them to some drinks. Mukoda asks the adventurers if they can tell him more about their world, revealing that he's from the kingdom of Reincarnated. The adventurers nod, saying that the new Reincarnated king has been constantly launching wars while trying to expand his territory. They tell Mukoda that the kingdoms of Ermin and Leonhardt are much more stable than their country, and have a bunch of dungeons for adventurers to explore. Mukoda thinks about all the loot he can get, but decides that staying alive is better than risking it for a few trinkets. He feels upset that he doesn't have a map of where to go, and the adventurers quietly tell him that they actually got a secret map. They show him a map with some locations plotted out, and tell Mukoda that he can have it since they have already memorized it. He thinks about their offer and decides that it's fair to pay a gold coin for such precious information. However, after Mukoda buys the map, the adventurers leave the pub and everyone else starts laughing at him. He asks them what's wrong, and they explain that he could have just gotten the public map from the Adventurers Guild for a silver coin instead of getting scammed by strangers. With this map in hand, Mukoda heads out with Fenrir towards the east, looking forward to the coastal areas. Meanwhile, up in the sky, Ninrir feels jealous that Mukoda easily lured her servant Fel with some food and stole him from her. Down on the earth, Fel takes Mukoda to a lake to eat some fish. He shocks the entire lake population into unconsciousness and tells Mukoda to take the fish he likes. Mukoda begins picking the trout, but when Fel tells him to grab some purple variants, he firmly refuses after realizing that they're poisonous. After collecting all the fish, Mukoda grabs some firewood with Fel and orders the ingredients for grilled trout. Once he has everything, Mukoda cleans up a couple of fish and puts them to grill on a skewer, while he preps Fel's special king trout. While preparing all the seasoning, Mukoda keeps reminding Fel to wait until the fish is properly grilled. Once all the different fish dishes are done, both master and servant dig into the food, instantly enjoying it. Mukoda then pulls out some beer to drink with the meat and goes ham on everything. While Mukoda eats, Fel complains that he has already finished, so he gets up to cook some more. Once they're both finally done eating, Fel asks Mukoda if he can cook more fish for him in the future, but he shakes it off and gets up to sleep. However, he runs into a little slime and wonders why the barrier didn't activate. Fel reminds Mukoda that the slime can't hurt him, and he sits down to pet the living jelly. Mukoda feels bad for the baby slime and wonders what to feed it since he's out of food. However, the slime just runs up to some garbage and dissolves it inside its body. Fel tells Mukoda that slimes can eat literally everything, so he rushes and stops the slime before it can devour his entire kitchen. After the slime cleans up all its plastic trash, Mukoda pats its head and it bounces with happiness. Mukoda wonders if the slime is intelligent as it jumps into his arms, confused by how friendly the monster is being with him. But Fel tells him that it has already become his familiar. Mukoda feels shocked that it became his familiar without even signing a contract, but Fel explains that since they both wanted to be together, they formed a partnership without a contract. Fel then asks Mukoda to name the baby slime, so he calls it Sui. The next day, Mukoda tries to create a stone missile, but only succeeds in lobbing a tiny pebble. Fel keeps laughing at his miserable failures, but Mukoda celebrates the fact that he can control another element. While Fel offers to get him some more practical experience, remembering his last disaster with the goblins, Mukoda firmly refuses, but Fel tells him he'll stay mediocre with his weak mindset. Afterward, Mukoda sits down to take a break, and Sui climbs onto his lap. He notices that Sui gained a lot of levels in just a day, and wonders if the plastic garbage from his other world is also a rare food source for the slime. Fel interrupts his thoughts by asking for more food, and Mukoda gets to cooking for everyone. He prepares a dish of marinated orc meat, which Fel starts devouring. Mukoda tells Sui to try eating the food instead of the bowl full this time before enjoying his own portion. After they all finish eating, Mukoda feels happy that he's used to orc meat now. Before checking out Sui's stats, he learns that the little slime only gets temporary buffs from his food, and feels happy while watching it clean his dirty kitchenware for free. He then looks at Fel, the big freeloader, before deciding to celebrate Sui's first real meal by ordering some sweet buns with green tea. He asks Sui if it likes the sweet buns, and it immediately says yes. The next morning, Fel looks out at the sky while Sui wakes Mukoda up. Once he gets up, Fel tells him that he received a message from Ninrir. This news shocks him, but Fel explains that his master is willing to give Mukoda a wind blessing if he sends her some sweets from his world every week. Mukoda feels confused why a powerful being like Ninrir wants food, while Fel informs him that the minor blessing will protect him from status effects and enhance his magical talent. However, as Fel reminds him of the weekly gift, Mukoda wonders how to send it to Ninrir. Fel tells him that he can place the sweets anywhere, and Ninrir will take them if he offers them. Then, after he tells Mukoda to give Ninrir some sweet buns and bread, he wonders why Fel's master is demanding food like a toddler asking for candy. After getting all the sweets Ninrir wants, Mukoda offers them to her, and the items disappear into thin air. After the items disappear, a faint glow appears on Mukoda's body, and he feels happy at receiving the blessing. Meanwhile, Ninrir feels ecstatic as she enjoys the sweet buns, thinking she has truly found happiness. She feels sad after the bun quickly disappears into her belly, but some chocolate milk gets her excited again. Ninrir thinks about saving the rest of the precious sweets she has left, but her greed gets the best of her, and she finishes them all in one go. Back on Earth, Mukoda successfully uses his stone magic after getting Ninrir's blessing. After some training, he feels tired and heads over to his backpack to get some food. He grabs a chocolate bar and sits down with Sui, waiting for Fel to return after a task. Soon, he returns and senses that Mukoda ate something behind his back, so Fel starts throwing a hissy fit to get some chocolate of his own. As he orders some chocolate for Fel, Mukoda suddenly receives a message from Ninrir, who tries to act mysterious, but ends up begging him for the chocolate like a spoiled child. Mukoda finally realizes the reason Ninrir blessed him, and he gives her the chocolate before Fel pushes him to leave for their next location. On the way there, he asks Mukoda about his earth magic progress, and after learning that he's still at a beginner level, Fel decides to take him somewhere special. Soon, Mukoda finds himself at the entrance of a new dungeon and tries to sneak away. However, Fel drags him back, saying that he needs more experience to improve his magic. Mukoda starts crying that the dungeon is too dangerous for him, but Fel reassures him that it only has weak monsters. Mukoda says that the weak monsters are still a big deal for him, but Fel tells him that he can't continue progressing at a snail's pace and reminds him that his barrier will protect him anyway. However, he warns Mukoda that if he gets too deep in the dungeon, his barrier might not work, so he needs to be prepared to protect himself. Realizing there's no way out, Mukoda starts preparing for his dungeon crawl and orders a bunch of different food. He explains to Fel that his food gives different kinds of buffs and begins stuffing his face to prepare for the dungeon. Once Mukoda finishes, Fel thinks he's ready for the fight, but he still feels scared as he heads inside. Fel gets frustrated that he's already shaking like a leaf at the entrance, so he pushes him into the action. Suddenly, a slime pops out, and Mukoda feels guilty for attacking it while having Sui with him. However, Sui mercilessly spits acid and melts down the opposing slime with zero guilt. Then, Mukoda uses his earth bullet to take out another enemy slime and notices that the earth is swallowing up its body. Fel explains that a dungeon is actually like a living creature that absorbs everything that dies inside it, which makes Mukoda even more scared as they head deeper inside. Once they go down a floor, suddenly, some kobolds start chasing Mukoda, who turns around and hits them as they get too close to him. He thinks he has done a great job, but Fel tells him he's still too weak and takes him even deeper to get stronger. After arriving at the lower level, Mukoda gets shocked by an entire army of kobolds and tries to chicken out. Fel refuses to let him weasel out and tosses Mukoda right into the horde with Sui to help. As the angered kobolds charge at him, Mukoda screams like a girl and flinches pathetically, but Fel's barrier protects him while Sui snipes all the monsters. Mukoda finally calms down after realizing he's safe and starts spamming his stone bullet to delete the kobolds. After decimating the entire floor, he notices two final kobolds who turn around to escape, but a creature inside the cave knocks them back. As the kobold king steps out, Mukoda stands there helplessly, before doing what he does best, running away screaming like a little girl. Fel reminds him that he can't defeat the monster by running, so he tries to use his stone bullets, but the kobold king easily shrugs off his attacks. Mukoda tries using more bullets, but the monster just attacks him through them. Then, after Fel warns him that the king can destroy his barrier, Mukoda gets serious and launches a big bullet attack that finally knocks out the monster. However, the kobold king somehow gets back up, and Mukoda runs out of mana to defend himself. As he thinks he's going to turn into wolf poop, the kobold king's attack gets stopped in its tracks by Fel's barrier, who reveals he was just lying to make Mukoda fight seriously. While the monster remains distracted, Sui pops up and melts it into a puddle of goo, and Mukoda passes out from exhaustion as his slime starts glowing. Later, Mukoda wakes up outside the dungeon with Sui nearby. Mukoda asks Sui if it's okay, and he replies that he's fine. He feels relieved at Sui's answer, but feels shocked after realizing that it's actually talking to him. Sui explains that he was able to talk after defeating the kobold king, and Mukoda finds out that he evolved into an adult slime after the fight. He then checks out his own stats, only to get heartbroken that he's even weaker than a 2-week-old slime. Mukoda then asks Sui about Fel, and he tells him that he went outside for a task. As Mukoda wonders if Sui is a special slime who can talk, Fel returns with a bloodied snout and asks for some real food. Mukoda gets mad at him for lying about the barrier, but Fel reminds him that he wouldn't have gotten stronger otherwise, so he starts ordering ingredients. After Mukoda prepares an egg-simmered rockbird gravy with rice, they all enjoy their lunch and sit down to relax. He asks Fel if he has already talked with Sui, and Sui confirms that Fel is a good uncle. The Grand Fenrir Fel gets offended and screams at Sui to use his normal name, which makes him cry. Mukoda comforts Sui in his arms and emotionally blackmails Fel, who gives up his dignity and finally allows Sui to call him uncle. While Fel tries not to cry from shame, Mukoda keeps cuddling his slime companion, feeling happy with his growing party. The next day, as they run through a forest, Fel tells Mukoda that they're going through boss-level Orthos and Griffin territories. Mukoda feels terrified, but Fel reminds him that those monsters can't touch him, but his pathetic master still tries to turn back and escape. However, Fel refuses to budge and tells him they're already inside Orthos territory. Once they head deeper, Fel suddenly stops, and soon, a bunch of brave and stupid Orthos jump out to fight. Mukoda quickly hides in a bush with Sui, while Fel reminds the young monsters how dumb their decision to fight is. The first Orthos rushes to attack Fel, but he takes it out without even touching its body. Finally, the other hooligans realize they're fighting a demon and run back into the forest. Fel calls Mukoda to come out, who asks him how he attacked the Orthos without even touching it. Fel proudly explains that he can use magic to claw at enemies even from a distance, and Sui asks Mukoda if he can use this skill too. He reminds him that he doesn't have claws like Fel, but starts praising Sui for having an even better acid spray, while Fel watches unamused that the slime stole his glory. Later at night, as Mukoda gathers some water in a bucket, he gets startled by a sound. Fel tells him that he's acting scared with no reason, since the Orthos won't appear to harass them again. He then asks Mukoda for dinner, who gets ready to start cooking, but feels horrified remembering that it'll still take them 3 weeks to get out of these wretched forests. Mukoda then takes out some black serpent meat and starts making a sweet and spicy sauce for it. Once Mukoda's done preparing the meat, he forces himself to eat it, thinking it's chicken, but Fel steals it all for himself. Left with nothing for himself, Mukoda cooks up another batch for his hungry dog and slime, but after they both finish, all he gets for himself is a small serving left for a sandwich. The next day, Fel is running through the forest, but stops after seeing some rare healing mushrooms, explaining that they can even heal broken bones. Mukoda gets off to pick all the mushrooms and lets Sui eat some of them. As he finishes filling up a full basket, Mukoda feels shocked when Sui starts glowing. He quickly checks on his baby, but Sui tells him he's fine, so Mukoda checks his stats with appraisal. He learns about Sui's new potion creation skill, and Fell tells him that slimes can get the properties of the magic materials they eat. Mukoda feels excited to see the healing potion factory in action, and Sui tries his best to create his first potion. As some liquid starts dripping out from Sui's arm, Mukoda rushes to collect it in a bottle and feels surprised that it's a high-quality potion that can heal near-death injuries. He asks Sui if he can make lower-quality potions as well, and Sui confirms that he can also make low and medium-quality potions for smaller injuries. Seeing the healing potion created so easily, Fell feels surprised by Sui's unique skill and praises him for his intelligence. Sui feels happy with all the attention he's getting and jumps into Mukoda's hands, who pampers him even more. A few days later, Mukoda and Fell stop in the Griffin territory. As the first Griffin appears, Mukoda gets ready for another fight, but the monster asks to have a duel with Fell to prove its strength to its people. Fell agrees and warns the Griffin that he won't hold back, but Mukoda telepathically tells him not to take the monster's life. With both of them ready, Fell charges at the Griffin, which flies up and shoots a storm of feather arrows at him. Fell avoids the arrows, but loses sight of the Griffin in the dust, so the bird uses this to launch a surprise attack. Mukoda feels lost since the fighting is happening in the dust, but Fell finally uses a tornado spell to sweep up the Griffin. As the tornado disappears, the Griffin falls from the sky, and Mukoda gets angry at Fell for going too far. However, the Griffin feels proud that it fought a serious match against the legendary Fenrir before closing its eyes. Mukoda quickly calls over Sui and uses a powerful healing potion on the Griffin, which gets up, feeling embarrassed that it lost so easily. However, Mukoda shows that it actually got Fell with a slight injury, and Fell awkwardly admits that he did get hurt. At this news, the Griffin gets excited and roars to call all its tribe, who fly over to their location. The Griffin heads to the lead spot and thanks Fell for helping him get recognized as a leader of his pack. He gives Mukoda a feather to keep so he can safely pass through the Griffin territory in the future, before flying away with its tribe. Afterward, Fell demands a big dinner because he used so much strength, so Mukoda decides to treat him with all the meat they have left. He preps some orc meat with egg batter and fries it in oil, and serves the finished dish to his party. Then, Mukoda sits down for his own meal and tries to forget that he's about to eat a half-human. Meanwhile, Fell and Sui finish their portions and ask for seconds, but then Fell reminds Mukoda to give his sweet gifts to Ninrir. Mukoda feels anxious that he totally forgot, and orders some more sweets before Ninrir gets upset and turns his wind blessing into a curse. The next morning, Fell finally makes it out of the forest with Mukoda, who feels excited to enter the kingdom of Leonhardt. He tells Fell that they're running out of meat, and the oversized meat processor starts running anxiously to hunt more monsters as soon as possible. However, they encounter a caravan getting attacked by some bandits, so Mukoda asks Fell to save them in exchange for a special dinner. Up ahead, the bandits quickly overpower the caravan guards, but Fell arrives at the scene and roars to intimidate them before ordering the bandits to leave. Facing the legendary beast, the bandits drop their weapons and get arrested. While the caravan leader Lambert thanks Mukoda for his help, Mukoda asks him where he was headed, and after learning that they're going to a Leonhardt city called Kerlina, he asks to tag along with them. Once they all start walking towards the city, Mukoda hears the guards whisper about his Fenrir and learns that they use a magic messaging ability to communicate between cities. Mukoda sighs, hoping that he remains safe from all the greedy monsters after his precious dog. After a little while, the caravan stops to rest, and Fell reminds Mukoda that he promised him a feast. Mukoda thinks about what to cook since he doesn't have much meat, so he decides to make some perfect nuggets with all the remaining chunks. As Mukoda's party indulges itself, the adventurers smell their amazing food and walks over to check it out. Noticing their pitiful stares, Mukoda gives the beggars some food as well, and he quickly runs out of all his meat before getting to eat even a single piece. As thanks for the good food, the adventurers offer to guard their group while Mukoda's party sleeps, and he happily accepts their offer. Nearby, the bandits get angry at the guards for being detained, but Mukoda reminds them that Fell will turn them into beef jerky if they try anything funny. The next day, the caravan reaches the city of Kerlina, where they hand over the bandits to the police. The caravan guards then decide to head over to the Adventurers Guild, and Mukoda goes with them as Lambert heads back to his shop. However, when Mukoda actually visits visits the guild, he learns that his license was revoked because he was inactive for over a month, as the receptionist explains that he needs to keep doing quests to retain his membership. Mukoda gives her his tag to re-register and tells her to register Sui as his familiar. She gets weirded out by the slime, and everyone else starts laughing at Mukoda. After getting registered, he heads to the shop to sell his meat, and the adventurers ask if they can look at the rare monsters Fel hunted. Soon, they stare at the mountain of dangerous beasts stacked up like a pile of trash, and quickly accept that Fel really is a real Fenrir. Meanwhile, the butcher feels excited to work on such high-quality materials. Out of curiosity, Mukoda asks him if he can butcher his meat elsewhere, and learns that other butchers can cheat him or carelessly ruin the monster loot. As the butcher gets to work, Mukoda feels excited to try more exotic meat, while the adventurers realize that they just ate literal gold from him last night. They all apologize for eating Mukoda's precious meat, but he tells them that he doesn't mind at all. As thanks, Captain Lars tells Mukoda to ask him for any help since he's a well-known guy in the city. Afterward, Mukoda heads to an inn to sleep, but feels bad that he has to keep doing quests to sell his meat at the guild. As he closes his eyes to rest, Ninrir starts telepathically crying that he hasn't given her any attention after coming to the city, so Mukoda gets up to give her a gift. He orders some extra special stuff this time, and Ninrir accepts them like an excited child, making him doubt her goddess status before he goes to sleep. The next morning, Mukoda looks at a guild billboard for some quests, and Fel tells him to hunt some goblins to increase his rank quickly. Mukoda reminds him that he still has PTSD from his last goblin encounter, and asks Fel why he's in such a rush to rank up and visit the ocean. Fel shamelessly tells him that he just wants good seafood, and Mukoda feels terrified of all the krakens and serpents lurking in the ocean. However, Fel insists that they go because he loved the fish they ate last time, and tries to get Sui to support him. Mukoda tries to convince Sui not to go, but it says that it wants to melt more monsters, forcing him to accept his party's decision. Once they head out to hunt, Sui spots a group of 3 goblins and turns them into fertilizer. Mukoda feels disgusted while cutting off goblin ears for proof, but then another bunch of them appear from behind. Sui sprays them with acid again and melts through the entire pack like butter. While Mukoda's knees tremble with fear, Sui asks him if he can fight more goblins, so Fel drags him away before he can refuse. Soon, the slime machine gun finishes, wiping out the local goblin population, and Fel makes Mukoda collect all their ears to get more adventurer points. Mukoda feels worried that the mountain of goblin corpses might attract beasts to the city or create another dungeon, and asks Fel to clean them all. He suggests burning the bodies, but Mukoda refuses to risk setting the entire forest on fire, so Fel then asks Sui to melt them all. Sui asks for Mukoda's permission before enlarging into a giant form, and Mukoda checks his stats and learns that he got another skill. Sui explains that he can now change his size at will, before melting his big form away and creating dozens of new slimes, which get to work and eat up all the goblins. Mukoda asks Fel if this is normal, but even the old Fenrir feels surprised by Sui's mysterious powers. After the slimes finish cleaning up, Mukoda realizes that Sui's powers might be even more valuable than his own grocery skill. Afterward, Mukoda orders some bread while they rest, and he wonders if it's okay to finish ranking up in just one day instead of the whole month. Once he gets back to the guild, Mukoda feels trapped as the guild members panic over his mountains of goblin ears. The receptionist calls him over to meet her guild master with his party, and Mukoda gets ready for another stressful meeting. After Mukoda enters the guild master's room, the leader, Willem, asks him about the goblins. Mukoda tells him that he encountered a big tribe of them, and Willem explains that the city was having trouble with all the goblins that had popped up, so he'll reward Mukoda for taking care of them all. Mukoda feels relieved that he's not getting investigated, while the guild master praises Fenrir's power for defeating the goblins. However, Sui reminds Willem that he did all the hard work, and the guild master feels surprised that Mukoda has another unique friend. Then, he tells Mukoda that the royal family has allowed him to live freely in their kingdom, but asks for Fel's help if they face an emergency. While Mukoda celebrates his freedom, Willem asks him about his adventurer rank promotions. He tells him that he wants to become F rank, but Willem offers to raise him directly to C rank if he can do some tasks for him. Mukoda realizes that a guild master must have some serious missions and tries to refuse, but Willem explains that Fel can complete these difficult requests on his own. As Fel agrees, Willem takes out some high-ranking quests, feeling excited to have some of the town's old problems solved. Mukoda then asks Willem to sell some rare beasts, but he tells him that he doesn't have enough money to purchase the precious Chimera and Orthos. Disappointed, Mukoda stores away the two terrors while the butcher works on the other special monsters. Learning that they're all S-ranked monsters, Mukoda feels a bit scared of his own pet Fel, and Sui says that it wants to become just like its uncle. As Mukoda prepares to head home, Willem tells him to get his C-rank card the next day. Once he gets back, Mukoda starts prepping some rockbird for dinner and peels the meat into smaller strips with Sui. After preparing the meat, Mukoda adds his veggies and seasonings and begins enjoying the meal with his friends. After dinner, Fel tries resting in his stable, but feels suffocated, so Mukoda gives him a mattress to lie on before leaving to sleep. The next morning, Mukoda gets his guild card from Willem and learns that he only needs to do a quest every 6 months from now on. Then, Willem shows him a huge pile of cash and explains that all the rare monsters he hunted sold for almost 2,000 gold coins. Mukoda feels happy to be rich, but then realizes he's become a prime target for bandits. After making the payment, Willem gives Mukoda his special quests to hunt a metal lizard and a pack of red-horned bulls, saying that they need the lizard taken care of first. Mukoda remembers that Fel has already hunted a metal lizard, realizing that he underestimated how dangerous these beasts were because Fel plucked them like weeds. Then, Willem explains that the red-horned bulls have started a colony near adventurer training grounds, and Fel feels excited to try their delicious beef. Mukoda also starts getting dirty thoughts about all the nasty things he could do to the bull's tender meat, and Willem feels creeped out by his disturbing expression. Afterward, Mukoda heads to Lambert's shop to buy a new carry bag for Sui. In that moment, Sui jumps into a bag he likes. Then, he also buys an expensive knife belt and purse, and grabs some leather shoes to replace his old ones. Lambert calculates the final price, but tells Mukoda that he can have the items for free since he saved his life. Then, he asks him if he has some expensive black serpent skin left, but Mukoda guiltily explains that he already sold it all to the guild. Lambert sighs, recalling the beautiful red serpent skin the guild recently bought, and Mukoda refrains from telling him that he was the one who sold it, too. As Mukoda later prepares to leave, Lambert asks him to sell any serpent skins to him in the future, and he accepts his request. Fel joins Mukoda as he walks back to the inn and demands to eat some more nuggets with Sui before they go lizard hunting. Once they get back, Mukoda gets to cooking and douses the meat in sauce before preparing to double fry it. After the first batch gets done, Mukoda's two pets quickly finish it and ask for more, and he happily prepares more servings. Once he's done feeding his pets, Mukoda sits down to have some food for himself and enjoys the full moon in the sky while having his feast. The next day, Fel reaches the metal lizard's location and asks Mukoda to check on his map. Once he gets confirmation, Fel starts running to sniff out the lizard's nest, and soon finds a cave near a forest. Mukoda asks him if he can stay outside while he goes in to hunt, but Fel just takes him inside anyway. Deep within the cave, Fel spots the metal lizard chomping away at some metal. Mukoda notices that the lizard is glowing for some reason and finds out that it's actually evolved to get a mithril skin. Fel explains that since the lizard has mithril armor, magic attacks will be less effective against it. Mukoda thinks that this will cause trouble for Fel, but the overpowered wolf just fries the lizard with a powerful lightning spell. Mukoda pays his respects to the fallen soul and stores it in his bag, and decides to pick some mithril ore while he's in the cave. He thinks about creating some magic armor with the material, but Fel gets angry and reminds him that his barrier is far stronger than some metal. Then, he grabs Mukoda and sprints off, ready to go hunt the bull colony for delicious beef. Once they reach the area, Mukoda decides to sit it out and let Fel hunt the monsters. Fel agrees and leaves him behind, but Sui pops out of its bag, leaving his master all alone. Mukoda takes a peek at the scene, but before he can even react, a huge wind blows out, clearing to reveal the bull corpses whose souls ascended to heaven. Sui comes back to Mukoda to proudly reveal that he cleaned up the monsters, while Mukoda wonders if he can even fit so much meat in his bag. As he struggles to shove the cows into his storage space, Sui creates his dozen clones and helps him move the bodies. Once the meat is stored away, Mukoda starts preparing preparing some orc and rockbird sandwiches for lunch. As they start eating, Sui gets curious about the soda Mukoda is drinking. He gives some of it to Sui, and it instantly empties the whole bowl, while Fel comes over to check it out. After enjoying an entire bottle, the big wolf sits down to rest and starts burping like an old engine. Later, Mukoda returns with the mithril lizard to the guild, and Willem tells him that this discovery is so serious, he'll have to report it to the king. The butcher explains that metal lizards are rare creatures, but in order for one to evolve into a mithril lizard, it must have found a new mithril ore vein. He reveals that mithril ore can only be mined at 3 locations in the world, so they have just discovered a new gold mine. Willem tells Mukoda that he'll sell the lizard to the king along with the mountain's location, but he'll get him a good reward for it, learning that he'll get 5,000 gold coins as compensation. Mukoda starts feeling scared of his own money, while the butcher feels jealous that he's suffering from success. However, Willem asks Mukoda for some time to prepare the big payment and tells him to take care of the Red Bulls in the meantime. Before he can even finish speaking, Mukoda unloads the entire herd into the room, leaving the guild master truly speechless. Afterward, Mukoda feels worried that he'll get into trouble for his secret discovery, but Fel impatiently asks him for dinner. The thought of premium beef cheers Mukoda up, and he gets ready to prepare them some good steaks. He cuts up the meat into big portions and prepares his pan for grilling. Once the pan is ready, Mukoda adds the spices and cooks up the meat before wrapping it up in foil to set. Fel and Sui feel excited as they wait, and when the steak is finally ready, they all ascend to heaven from the exquisite flavor. After finishing his portion, Fel asks Mukoda for his special treat, so he drizzles some garlic sauce all over his next serving. Later, the two beasts rest while Mukoda cleans the dishes, and Fel tells him that he can't go back to raw meat after getting hooked on his cooking. As Sui also praises his master, Mukoda feels happy to have these companions and feels determined to continue treating them with delicious cuisine. After finishing the dishes, Mukoda heads to his room to give Ninrir her gifts before going to sleep. He orders some sweets from his store, but Ninrir complains that she wants even more. She feels excited after Mukoda orders some deluxe cakes and puddings for her, but suddenly, some other goddesses interrupt her and greet him on the call. The other 3 girls get angry at Ninmir for hogging all the good stuff, but she claims that she's just getting compensation for giving him a blessing. The biggest of the 3, the goddess of earth Kisharl, tells Mukoda that a blessing can only enhance his power if he uses the corresponding element magic. Along with her, the goddess of fire Agni offers to boost his fire magic as well, and Mukoda feels stuffed under all of their offers. Ninrir tries to protect him from the others by reminding them that they've been giving out too many major blessings already. However, the 2 just settle for giving him minor blessings, and Mukoda feels like he can't refuse them even if he wanted to. Mukoda asks them if it's normal for one person to gain the blessings of multiple goddesses, and they realize nobody else in history got it. However, Agni doesn't care, and she blesses Mukoda without his consent, and Kisharl does the same. Ninrir feels upset that she has to share her human bakery, but the 3rd goddess quietly asks her if she's not going to get anything. Ninrir and the others grow quiet after she speaks, and she introduces herself as Rusalka, the goddess of water. Rusalka feels upset that she can't get Mukoda's sweets because he doesn't have any water magic and starts crying. Everyone panics to calm her down, and the girls tell Mukoda he should help. While he feels confused about what to do, Sui asks him if he can help. This gives Mukoda the idea to have Sui blessed by Rusalka, and she agrees to give him a major water blessing. Once all the girls calm down, Mukoda sends all of them a big box of treats as a gift. Before lying down to check his stats, he decides to keep his blessings a secret, while Sui feels confused, so Mukoda tells him to test out the blessings the next morning. The next day, Mukoda uses his fireball and stone bullet spells, feeling happy to see them much stronger than before. Then, Sui creates a big ball of water and completely obliterates a giant tree with it, before slicing down another 2. Mukoda feels scared of Sui's power and warns it never to use its powers on people. While Mukoda goes back to training with his new power, Fel goes out to hunt some more beasts. When he later returns, Fel sees that Mukoda built a new house for them to sleep in with some earth magic. However, he puts down a black serpent, demanding dinner before they can go in to rest. The next day, Fel asks Mukoda if he wants to hunt some more meat. He refuses, saying that they should sell the serpent skin to Lambert while while they collect the previous meat from the Adventurers Guild. Once they go back to town, the butcher hands over the finished bull meat along with the money, saying that it will still take them some time to process the mithril lizard. Mukoda nods and gives him the black serpent to process the meat and skin. Before returning to make lunch, he takes out a meat grinder to make some mincemeat, and Sui helps him crank the manual machine to finish the work in seconds. Once the meat is ready, Mukoda sautés some onions and prepares the meat in an egg and bread batter. Then, he turns the beef into patties and puts them on a grill, and the group soon stuffs their faces with some good food. Once they're done eating, Mukoda tries washing himself, but realizes that the inn's soap is useless. He decides to order some premium soaps and shampoos from his online mart to use and sell to Lambert. Once the soap arrives, he visits Lambert's shop and starts by selling the serpent skin. Before asking him if he can sell his soaps as a merchant, Lambert looks at the soap and admires it for its high quality. But when Mukoda introduces the rest of the magical hair and skin products as well, he starts thinking that God sent him a miracle from heaven. Lambert explains to Mukoda that his wedding anniversary is next week, so he got the perfect gift to give his wife, who is tired of all his bags and purses. As Mukoda learns that Lambert's wife loves taking baths, he starts wanting a bathtub for himself and asks him if he sells any. Lambert shows him a luxurious tub, but explains that because bathtubs are so expensive to make, he'll need a few hundred gold coins to pay a specialized tub shop. With all the money from monster loot, Mukoda decides it's worth it to pay so much, and Lambert offers to introduce him to a tub maker before he leaves. The next day, Mukoda goes back to Lambert to check on him and meets his enthusiastic wife at the door. She introduces herself as Mary before explaining that because of Mukoda's shampoos, her husband actually looked like he had taken a shower for the first time in years. She then praises Mukoda for his magical conditioners that fixed her dry hair, and Lambert asks him if he can sell his soaps in his store. Lambert says that he's a bit skeptical about selling soaps as a leather merchant, but his wife tells him that the rare soaps will be an instant success. She asks Mukoda to sell his goods to Lambert's store, and he quickly accepts, saying he doesn't know other merchants anyway. After finishing his goods delivery, Mukoda heads back to Fel and Sui, and Fel asks him if they can go hunting again. However, Mukoda refuses, explaining that the guild master arrived in town to see him before leaving the bored wolf to rot alone. Inside the guild, Mukoda enters the guild master's room and immediately screams in shock at the mountains of gold piled up. With the 6,000 gold coins in hand, Mukoda thinks he's going to get the best bathtub of all time, but a guild secretary interrupts to inform Willem that some adventurers got critically wounded by wyverns. As they rush down to check, the secretary explains that the party was attacked on the city outskirts. Once they reach the ground floor, they see the wounded adventurers, and Willem asks the surrounding people for healing potions. Mukoda quickly gives him some of Sui's potions, and they instantly restore the adventurer's health like senzu beans. Mukoda tries to act innocent as Willem feels suspicious of his medicine, but he orders his staff to take the adventurers to a doctor. Then, after Willem announces an emergency quest to hunt down the rogue wyverns, Mukoda realizes that he also has to participate as a C rank before anyone can leave the guild, though Fel arrives and declares that he'll take care of all the monsters himself. Mukoda tries to stop him, but Fel feels too bored to sit around and decides that he wants to eat wyvern meat for lunch. Seeing Fel ready to fight, Willem offers to help, but he tells him that he'll just get in his way. With the city's fate in Fel's hands, Mukoda is left helpless to head out with him. Once they reach the wyvern area, Fel stops to look at the flying beasts and says that he'll teach Sui how to hunt the birds. As the wyverns swoop down to attack, Fel takes Sui on his back and rushes towards them, and tells him to aim for their heads and necks to take them down. Sui takes a shot and hits a wyvern, but misses its head. The injured creature falls down screaming in pain, and Fel removes his head like a plastic puzzle piece. With his guns warmed up, Sui starts launching artillery missiles at the flying beasts, while Mukoda hides behind a rock like a complete wimp, watching the two of them rip the wyvern flock apart. Mukoda feels heartbroken that his cute Sui is getting corrupted by the violent Fel. Suddenly, a wyvern sneaks up behind him, and he screams like a little boy. When it strikes him with its tail, Fel's barrier activates and blocks the attack. However, Sui and Fel arrive just in time to turn the wyvern into a headless chicken. After they finish off off the flock, Fel and Sui ask for lunch, and Mukoda pulls out some leftover beef patties. He coats them in some egg batter and fries them up before enjoying the delicious meat with his cold-blooded friends, while Mukoda enjoys an outdoor barbecue. The guild secretary feels worried that he'd get hurt by the monsters. However, Willem remains confident that he'll return just fine with the murder puppy Fel by his side. It takes a while for Mukoda's group to return, so the guild members get worried, but he finally returns at night. Willem anxiously asks him how the mission went, and Mukoda informs him that they exterminated all the wyverns in the sky. Soon, the entire guild erupts into cheers, and Willem explains that the wyverns had been terrorizing them all for quite a while. He tells Mukoda that the guild thought they were taking too long because they got hurt, while he feels guilty that he was just stuffing his face with burgers as they waited. However, Fel just tells Willem they were eating the wyverns, exposing their secret with zero shame. Mukoda later tells Willem that he preserved the wyverns' bodies by chopping their heads off, leaving him shocked that they can carefully handle such dangerous beasts. Willem tells him that he can butcher the meat for free, but only has enough money to pay for half of the monsters. But Mukoda doesn't mind. Once he hands over the meat, he returns to the inn to rest and remembers to send sweets to the goddesses who blessed him. Just then, he gets a message from Agni complaining about her sweets, but Ninrir secretly tells him to give her a bigger share of sweets. As Mukoda feels more frustrated, Kisharl also secretly asks him for hair care products, while Ruzalka requests some meat. Mukoda reminds all three of them that the others will find out about their secret messages when he sends the gifts anyway. As the three feel embarrassed, Agni gets furious that they contacted him privately, while Mukoda wishes he could end it all. The next day, Mukoda walks with Fel to the bathtub store. As he enters the large building, he instantly gets charmed by all the luxurious baths around him. While the shopkeeper shows him around all the different goods, Mukoda settles for a plain green tub and asks him to get it ready. The shopkeeper feels surprised that he has already decided and asks if he has a monthly payment plan for the hundreds of gold coins. Mukoda realizes that he doesn't look like he can afford such a huge amount up front and gives the owner a huge bag of gold. The shopkeeper asks him if he needs a delivery service for the tub, but Mukoda just uses his storage space and happily leaves the store with Fel. As they walk through the city, Mukoda asks Fel to leave the town since everyone started treating them differently after the wyvern hunt. He goes out to a nice forest to start setting up the tub, while Fel leaves to go hunt. After Fel leaves, Mukoda creates a stone wall for privacy and puts the tub inside, while Sui fills it up with water. Then, he warms up the water with his fireball before adding some special bath salts to it. Mukoda finally jumps into the cozy tub and washes off the months of dirt and grime on him, and finishes off the bath with a bottle of milk. After getting out of the bath, Mukoda starts preparing the wyvern meat for lunch. He chops some onions, slices the meat, and then prepares a sauce to soak it in. Once the meat is cooked, he pours the gravy on some rice and finishes the dish with some garnish. However, since Fel still hasn't returned, he decides to make some more food while he waits. Mukoda orders some veggies and bottles and prepares the rest of the meat in a nice stew. As he waits for the food to cook, Sui calls out that Fel has arrived, but Mukoda gets jump scared by a dinosaur corpse. Fel proudly tells him that because he wasn't satisfied with just some wyverns, he decided to hunt an earth dragon as well. Mukoda tries to ignore his insane feat, but starts screaming in panic anyway, and Fel wonders why he's so scared. Mukoda asks him what he's supposed to do with a real dragon, reminding him that it's so rare nobody will even buy it from him. Fel asks him if he can just get the meat from the dragon before noticing the aroma of the delicious wyvern food before Fel can eat, though Mukoda tells him that he's dirty from the fight and orders him to take a bath. Fel starts coping that he always keeps himself clean, but Mukoda refuses to let him eat before cleaning up. To help him bathe, Mukoda orders some dog shampoo from his store. Fel feels offended that he's getting treated like a pet, but Mukoda starts grooming him like a dog anyway. Once he brushes Fel's fur, he splashes him with water, and Fel feels annoyed by the little splashes. He asks Mukoda to just use Sui's water, but he explains that Sui can't make warm water for a bath. However, as he watches Sui play in the water, Mukoda gets the idea to mold his slimy body into water pipes. With the water pipe, he gives the embarrassed Fel a full dog wash. After the bath, Mukoda starts rubbing Fel's fur with a shampoo, and he starts to enjoy the special treatment. moment. Mukoda tells Fel that he has to clean his face too, and he reluctantly accepts it to look like the best doggy ever. Once the bath is over, Fel shakes his fur dry and gives Mukoda a second bath. Mukoda then uses his fire and wind magic to dry both of them up, and Fel starts feeling proud of looking so handsome. However, even while gloating, Fel asks about dinner, so Mukoda takes out the wyvern dish he prepared. He pours out the gravy onto rice bowls, which makes Fel suspicious, but he forgets it and starts chomping down after tasting how good it is. Seeing Fel enjoy himself, Mukoda starts eating his own portion, but Fel asks him about the other pot he's cooking. Mukoda explains that the other pot needs some time to taste best, and they head back to town after finishing dinner. Once they get back, Mukoda tries selling the dragon to the guild, but Willem immediately refuses, saying they can't even afford a single claw from the legendary beast. Fel asks him to just butcher the meat, but Mukoda reminds him that they can't just ignore the other parts. Willem stops to think and tells him that the guild master from Dolan City might be able to process the dragon for him. After learning that Dolan is near the sea, Fel gets excited to enjoy all the ocean monsters, and Mukoda thinks he can get the dragon processed on their way there. The two guild members laugh at how casually he's taking a dragon beast and send Mukoda on his way. Before leaving Corlina, Mukoda greets all his friends, and Willem gives him a map for his journey. With all his preparations done, Mukoda's party heads out to explore new horizons. Sometime later, in a dense forest, some ferocious giant spiders surround an unsuspecting little rabbit. As they get closer, one of the spiders lunges to snatch the rabbit for lunch, but a majestic Fel saves the day. After electrocuting the entire spider colony, Fel asks Mukoda if there are any furry-legged monsters left. Mukoda confirms that all the spiders are gone, but wonders what to do with their hairy corpses. Seeing him upset, Fel reveals that the inner parts of the spiders are actually very delicious. Meanwhile, the baby slime Sui pops out of Mukoda's bag, upset that Fel erased the spiders before it could have some fun with them. As Mukoda starts comforting his baby, Fel gets jealous and points out that he's always doting on Sui. Offended, Mukoda reminds the overgrown husky that he also begs him for treats like a whiny dog. At the mention of snacks, Fel gets excited and shamelessly asks Mukoda to make some more for him. Mukoda is tired of his antics, but he's got no choice but to satisfy his living meat processor. Before cooking, Mukoda puts away all of the spider corpses into his bottomless storage. Once the spiders are stored, he takes out all of the meat he has. Seeing that he doesn't have too many portions of the same meat, Mukoda decides to make a dish called gyoza. Both Fel and Sui are interested in the dish, but Mukoda says that it'll be a surprise. As Sui bounces around in excitement, Mukoda opens up his online grocery store to order some spices. Seeing the store, Fel asks for some premium wagyu, but Mukoda reminds him that he's only getting spices for their current dish. After ordering all the ingredients, Mukoda chops up the veggies and adds the sauce and spices to the meat. Once the sauces are in, he puts in the veggies and starts mixing them around with the meat. Finally, he makes some dumpling wraps with all the meat filling and hands them to Sui to prepare. Together, the master slime duo uses up the entire filling pot to fill 2 dishes with their dumplings. Mukoda takes the dumplings and starts cooking them on medium heat before adding the final bits of flour, salt, and sauce. Once it's done cooking, he flips the pan upside down and reveals the thoroughly seasoned gyoza dumplings. Mukoda proudly sets down the dish and begins explaining his cooking process, but Fel starts devouring it before he can finish a sentence. After just one bite, Fel turns from a savage animal into a master food critic, praising all its intricate flavors and textures. While Fel chomps away, Sui keeps dissolving all the dumplings in its slimy acid. Both monsters finish a batch in less than a minute, so Mukoda starts cooking up another batch. However, none of them notice as a tiny dragon watches their special dinner from a tree. Once the 2 monsters are done stuffing their mouths, Mukoda finally gets some time to relax and eat his own meal. He eats the gyoza from a small plate, enjoying the scraps his hungry companions leave for him. Unfortunately, Mukoda gets interrupted by a tiny dragon latching onto his face. Seeing the magic lizard innocently staring at his face, Mukoda takes some time to process his feelings before screaming out in horror. He asks Fel about the creature, and Fel reveals that it's a very rare pixie dragon. Mukoda is surprised that he actually encountered a mythical creature, and wonders if the flying lizard wants some of his food. As he moves his chopsticks around, the dragon follows the food, so so Mukoda gives it a dumpling to eat. The little creature hugs the entire dumpling with its tiny body and takes a bite, instantly falling in love with the delicious cooking. Soon, the dragon finishes the whole dumpling and begs Mukoda for more. He quickly gives the rest of his own food to eat, which the dragon happily rushes to. As Mukoda thinks the dragon is pretty cute, Fel warns him not to be fooled by its tiny body because it can use any type of magic and annihilate most of its enemies in battle. Nearby, the dragon finishes its remaining meal and suddenly clings to Mukoda's face again. The dragon's body quickly glows before Mukoda yanks it off his face. Suddenly, he hears a voice in his head demanding more delicious food, which leaves Mukoda confused. Fel tells him that the pixie dragon has decided to join their party and become his familiar, allowing it to communicate with everyone via telepathy. Mukoda's jaw drops as he realizes he's gonna go bankrupt with another mouth to feed, while Sui is excited to get another friend. Taking a look at Sui, the pixie dragon praises it for its surprising power. Before they can get too chummy, Mukoda stops them, pointing out that he didn't even consent to accepting the dragon as his familiar. He asks the pixie dragon if it really thinks it's worth following him around just for some food, but the tiny dragon thinks it's totally worth it. Fel quickly accepts it into the team, saying that a few decades of helping a puny human is nothing to ancient beasts like them. As the dragon agrees with Fel, Mukoda is stunned that all of the pretentious legendary beasts in this world are just a bunch of shameless gluttons. Then, the dragon reminds Mukoda that it needs a name as his new partner, so he calls it Dora-chan. After hearing his new name, Dora starts complaining that a powerful creature like him shouldn't have such a cute name, but Mukoda refuses to change his mind. As he checks Dora's stats, Mukoda points out that the system has already accepted his name, so he can't change it. In that moment, he also realizes that Dora is 116 years old. Remembering how Mukoda tried to give him some fluffy dog names when they first met, Fel tells Dora to just accept his fate. Meanwhile, Sui happily tells the group that he loves his name, and Mukoda thinks his three misfits will get along just fine. A few days later, Mukoda's party enters the city of Krail. As he registers Dora as his new familiar at the Adventurers Guild, the attendant informs him that the guild master has a special request. While Mukoda wonders why his help is needed, the guild master, called Rodolfo, appears and starts rambling about his pixie dragon. Seeing Mukoda's confusion, Rodolfo explains that he has a forest exploration quest for him. In a private room, Rodolfo reveals that the forest monsters are acting unusually aggressively, so Mukoda suggests that they just avoid the forests for now. This angers the dwarven leader, who points out that their town depends on the silk obtained from the forest monsters to make their textiles. Mukoda understands that the town is in a tough spot, but he feels too scared to fight dangerous monsters. However, Dora tells him that the forest is just filled with pitiful spiders and centipedes, which reminds Mukoda of his recent experience. Meanwhile, Rodolfo is confused since he can't hear telepathic conversation between the two partners. Fel also confirms that he took out all the spiders, so Mukoda shows him the venom tarantula corpses from his back. The sight of the spiders almost gives Rodolfo a heart attack, since they're the monsters he was talking about, and he wonders why Mukoda has them. He sheepishly points to Fel, who says that he just punished the spiders for bad behavior. Mukoda thinks he's in trouble for stealing the town's source of income, but Rodolfo reveals that the forest is actually overpopulated with these spiders, so he just solved their problem, happy that his quest is complete. Rodolfo tells Mukoda that he can sell the spider materials for some good money and cook the rest of their meat in delicious ways. Mukoda's face sinks as Fel and Dora drool at the thought of boiled spider meat, but he gives in once Sui asks to try the spiders. He asks Rodolfo to sell the materials and process the meat, and the dwarf quickly agrees to his request. While the guild processes their spiders, Mukoda and the other explore the town's clothes market. Mukoda takes a look at some soft fabric, falling in love with the material's quality. However, he gets shocked by the insane price of 1 gold, but realizes that the material is probably worth the cost. Soon enough, the shopkeeper also appears and tells Mukoda that the other towns don't sell this fabric for so cheaply. This gives Mukoda the motivation to buy the golden drip, and he stocks up on clothes before returning to the guild. Rodolfo shows him all the processed meat, explaining that he left the external shells on the legs since the meat loses its taste if it's exposed too long. Mukoda notices that the spider's legs look just like crab legs. Just then, Rodolfo breaks a crispy boiled leg to feed him some tender meat. After taking a bite, Mukoda instantly falls in love with the meat, and his hungry companions quickly come begging for a taste. After announcing that they'll have a crab party, he prepares a bunch of tasty side dishes to eat with the boiled legs. Mukoda also tells Dora to enjoy himself and treat the food as his welcome party, so the dragon happily accepts his offer. As they begin snacking, Mukoda leaves his familiars to chow down while he prepares a special dish for himself. He grills some spider legs, but his partners start begging him for that as well. Left with no choice, Mukoda gives the grilled legs to his friends, who devour them without hesitation. As Mukoda grills another batch of legs, Dora says he's glad that he chased him all this way. This surprises Mukoda, so the pixie dragon explains that he always lost track of him because Fel was so fast. Mukoda finally realizes that the poor forest spiders were just attacking because they were scared of Dora, while Fel massacred them without a hint of guilt. Feeling bad for the weak creatures, he decides to pay his respects by thoroughly enjoying their delicious remains. After the feast, Mukoda creates his own bath in the Adventurer Guild's yard. While he relaxes inside with Sui, Fel and Dora lie exhausted in the stables. After getting out of the bath, Mukoda heads to bed, remembering that he needs to return the spider shells to Rodolfo. He feels like he forgot something else, but falls asleep before he can recall it. The next morning, Mukoda returns the spider shells to Rodolfo and gives him some leftover food as thanks. The pleased dwarf happily accepts the meat, but Mukoda thinks he should give him some more food. He starts pulling out his earth dragon corpse, but remembers that this powerful creature could cause incredible shock if he isn't careful. Finally, Mukoda steps aside and lets Rodolfo look at the dragon, leaving the dwarf shocked to his core. He points out that Mukoda could basically buy an entire kingdom with that creature, but Mukoda asks if he can find someone to process the dragon meat first. After thinking for a bit, Rodolfo remembers that there's someone in the city of Dolan who can help, so he gives Mukoda a letter of recommendation for the city's guild master. As Mukoda accepts the letter, Rodolfo admits that the guild master of Dolan is a very talented individual, but he has a strange side to him. Afterward, Mukoda and his party head out of Krail, ready to visit their target destination, the City of Dungeons. Once they reach Dolan, Mukoda is excited to explore, while Fel looks forward to the tough challenges of the dungeon city. Since Mukoda is a certified wimp, he doesn't want to go to the dungeon, but his familiars remind him that he's going there to get some earth dragon meat processed. Excited for the meat, Fel rushes to the city, but they're all forced to wait in line at the town's border. Dora wonders why they can't just barge in, so Mukoda reminds them that they can't just bypass security like a bunch of illegals. After Mukoda calms down his pets, the rest of the people in line finally notice the legendary beasts behind them. Seeing them so terrified, Mukoda quickly tells everyone that the monsters are just his familiars, while the border guards come over to check the commotion. Mukoda tells the guards that he's only there to see the guild master. After he shows them his guild cards, the guards wonder if they should trust him, but suddenly, a handsome elf walks over. The elf says that Mukoda is his guest since he's the one with all the rare beasts. As Elrond introduces himself as the Dolan Guild Master, his eyes pop out when he notices Dora sitting on Mukoda's shoulder. He takes Mukoda and his familiars inside the guild, saying that Rodolfo already explained the situation to him. Then, Elrond brings out a magic dragon stand for Dora to sit on, but Dora finds Mukoda's bag more comfortable. Seeing it lays around, Elrond quickly starts writing all his observations for his research. Dora feels uncomfortable with the elf's behavior, while the elf wonders why it's acting so differently from its recorded behavior. Then, Elrond remembers the Earth Dragon, so he starts taking Mukoda to the warehouse to process it. However, his assistant, called Uger, interrupts to remind him that he has a meeting with the Merchant Guild's leader. As Elrond tries to postpone it, Uger shoots him a murderous glare. Once they get into the warehouse, Elrond asks Mukoda to show him the dragon, remembering how fearsome the legendary creatures can be. He recalls that during his youth, a grand party was organized to kill a dragon. At that time, he was only a B-rank adventurer, so he wasn't even allowed to process the dragon's meat. After that incident, Elrond trained hard to become an S-rank adventurer just to look at a dragon again, but nobody dared to kill another dragon. Now, he finds his wish come true, as Mukoda lays out the giant reptile in front of his eyes. Seeing the legendary creature, Elrond starts frothing with greed, and he pulls out some creepy experimentation tools to start checking its meat. As he starts checking all the dragon's important measurements for research, Fel wonders why he isn't just giving him the meat. Mukoda quiets his hungry dog before Elrond asks him what Dora likes to eat. Mukoda tells him that Dora doesn't actually have a preference, and he eats basically anything he cooks. This information turns Elrond's world upside down, since the research shows that pixie dragons are exclusively herbivorous. However, Mukoda explains that he eats almost everything, especially meat. Elrond is confused about how Mukoda can communicate with the little dragon. When Mukoda reveals that Dora communicates with him through telepathy, Elrond is left even more flabbergasted and starts bombarding him with questions about his beast. Thankfully, Ygr drags him back, apologizing for his master's unhinged behavior. He guarantees that Elrond is a skilled processor despite his goofy antics. So Fel wonders when he'll give him the dragon's precious meat. Elrond wonders if Fel doesn't want the dragon's valuable skin and other materials, but Fel is only interested in stuffing his gut. Seeing Fel so desperate, Elrond starts begging Mukoda to let him taste it. He tells Elrond that Fel gets to decide who shares their meat, so Fel thinks it's only fair to let Elrond have some meat, as long as he can provide some good cuts. Afterward, Mukoda and the gang lie outside, exhausted from Elrond's constant yapping. Fel remembers how much the elf bothered them, asking billions of random questions for his research. Despite that, Elrond couldn't process the entire dragon in just one day, so now they feel like their life is meaningless. Seeing them all so hungry, Mukoda decides to order some instant food. Dora is curious since he hasn't seen the online store before. As soon as Fel spots it, he asks Mukoda if they can get some wagyu this time. However, Mukoda notices that there's a festival going on in Japan, so he orders some festival food. Once the food and ingredients arrive, Mukoda takes out a cooking pot to start preparing. His familiars wonder why he's using such a strange pot, so Mukoda explains that he's going to cook the veggies in it. Fel gets angry since he hates plants, but Mukoda tells him to be patient for the good flavors. He starts heating the pot and puts all the veggies to the side before adding the meat and drizzling sauce all over it. As Mukoda patiently cooks the delicious food, his band of belly stuffers tries to control themselves from going crazy. Once the food is done, Mukoda gives it to Fel, who feels disappointed that half the plate is vegetables. Mukoda tells him to just try it, so Fel takes a bite of the dish. As Fel enjoys the rich flavors, the others also start tasting the food. Soon, Fel gives up the idea of avoiding all veggies and asks for another serving after finishing his current one. Mukoda happily feeds all of his pets before taking out some butter sandwiches to eat. As he opens the box of sandwiches, Sui curiously comes up, so Mukoda gives him a sandwich to try. The baby slime instantly falls in love with the sweet treat, and the other two come over after seeing its delighted reaction. Fel and Dora wonder if sweets can be good too, so Mukoda gives them some sandwiches as well. As both of them try it, they enjoy the sweet, but the sandwich feels too small for them. They start demanding their master for more treats, who wonders what he did to deserve such greedy partners. The next day, a sleep-deprived Mukoda heads to the Adventurers Guild after his familiars kept pestering him about the dragon meat all night. As he greets Ygr, Elrond comes out of his warehouse, looking like he just ran 5 marathons straight. Excited, he explains that he spent the entire last night researching and experimenting on the dragon's body, so now he's finally ready to actually butcher it. Once he's ready, Elrond takes out a special mithril knife to pierce the dragon's tough skin. However, when he tries to cut it, the knife shatters like glass, leaving everyone stunned. Elrond starts crying that he broke his guild's precious treasure. Fel asks him how he plans to process the precious dragon meat without a knife. Elrond responds that he'll need to prepare a blade even stronger than mithril, so he'll have to wait a while before he can process the dragon. This news sends Fel into depression, and he collapses from the sheer emotional trauma. On the ground, Fel thinks his life is ruined. While Ygr points out that their guild doesn't have any other mithril knives, he tells Mukoda that they need to get more mithril ore from the dungeon to craft a new blade, so Fel immediately gets up to dash over there. Mukoda stops his hungry dog, reminding him that if he went all out and destroyed everything in the dungeon just to get some mithril, he'd become too popular and would ruin their peaceful life. After Mukoda's warning, Fel finally calms down, so he starts preparing a normal lunch to cheer him up. He takes out some thinly sliced orc meat, preparing it with the leftover veggies from their previous lunch. While flipping the ingredients in a frying pan, Mukoda adds the sauces and spices, adding the remaining flavor to his dish. Once the food is cooked, he pours it all over fragrant boiled rice to complete the dish. Before Fel Fel can dig in, Mukoda adds an egg to his dish just for some extra flavor. As everyone starts eating the tasty dish, they quickly forget about the precious dragon meat. Mukoda feels relieved that he doesn't have to deal with their whining, but he knows that he needs to fix the dragon problem as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in the sky, the four goddesses keep crying that Mukoda isn't sending them any gifts. Suddenly, two men pop up, angry that the girls are abusing their powers to extort gifts from a weakling. Hearing them argue with each other, Mukoda tells the goddesses to leave him out of it, but the two men butt in. One of them introduces himself as the god of blacksmithing called Hephaestus, while the other calls himself the god of war, named Vahan. When Mukoda learns that Hephaestus is a blacksmith, he asks if the god can do something about the knife. Hephaestus responds that he can enhance any blade he makes to be of a higher quality. Of course, he isn't ready to just hand out his blacksmithing blessing for free, so Hephaestus demands some alcohol from him. Meanwhile, Vahan is interested in the otherworldly items from Mukoda's supermarket, which angers the girls. Naturally, Hephaestus ignores them and focuses on giving Mukoda his blessings, but he realizes that Mukoda doesn't have any talent for blacksmithing. Then, the god's attention falls on Sui, whom he thinks has great potential. Seeing that Hephaestus can't buff Mukoda, Vagon decides to take the chance and enhance his war powers. However, Mukoda refuses, saying he doesn't like fighting, but Vagon reminds him that he's going to explore a dungeon soon. Then, he starts thinking about another target, so Mukoda tells him to bless Fel and Dora. As the two of them begin blessing Fel, Dora, and Sui, Mukoda orders some offerings for all of the gods. Once they receive the offerings, the boys enjoy their food while the girls gush over their beauty products. Remembering Mukoda's past neglect, Ninrir warns him not to forget her offerings again. He feels frustrated that he'll need to send even more offerings to the gods, so he turns his attention to studying Sui's blacksmithing skill. He thinks the dungeon will be a great opportunity to test Sui's new abilities, but Fel reminds him that they already have some pure mithril from the mithril lizard he defeated. Remembering the ore, Mukoda asks Fel why he wanted to hunt in the dungeon, even though they already had some, but the wolf just shrugs it off. Then, Mukoda reaches into his item storage and takes out the mithril chunks. He asks Sui to forge them into special knives, so Sui takes the chunks and dissolves them inside its body. After lots of bubbling and gurgling, Sui finally produces a beautiful crystal knife, and Mukoda immediately notices it's of high quality. He's relieved that they don't have to risk their lives in the dangerous dungeon, but Fel gets annoyed since he wanted to try eating some exotic dungeon monsters. Afterward, Mukoda visits Elrond, who's having an existential crisis because he can't find a blade better than mithril. Seeing him so distraught, Mukoda gives Ugur the mithril knife that Sui crafted and asks him to pass it to Elrond. The elf carefully brings the knife close to the dragon's body, terrified that even the slightest mistake could shatter both the blade and his hopes once again. However, the knife easily cuts through the tough skin, surprising Elrond with its quality. He wonders how Mukoda got such an amazing piece, but Mukoda acts like he got it from a top secret source. Elrond almost asks Mukoda to reveal his secrets, but he calms down and goes back to processing the dragon. Mukoda wonders how long it'll take him to finish processing the whole thing, so Elrond tells him it'll take at least 3 days. Fel gets angry that he still has to wait for so long, but Mukoda reminds him that the dragon is a huge monster with loads of meat to process. Fel nods in agreement, but suggests they explore the dungeon while Elrond works his magic. Mukoda refuses to go, feeling scared of the danger, but Sui also starts begging to let him have some fun too. Sometime later, they reach the dungeon entrance, where the receptionist warns Mukoda that it might take his party up to a month to make it out. She also advises him to pack plenty of food if he plans to venture into the deeper floors. She explains that no one has ever cleared the 30-floor dungeon before, which makes Mukoda immediately consider packing up and heading home instead. However, Fel starts glaring at him, so Mukoda reminds him that if he doesn't stock up on a ton of delicious food, they'll have to eat rotten scraps in the dark dungeon. This finally calms him down, and they agree to wait. Smiling at their obedience, Mukoda takes them all on a shopping trip, and he buys a bunch of veggies to cook in the dungeon. Then, he notices a magic stove outside a shop. Fel wonders why Mukoda wants such a huge stove, so he explains that it'll be very useful for cooking. Just then, the shopkeeper comes out and starts promoting his products to Mukoda. He explains that the stove also includes a massive oven capable of cooking entire cockatrice monsters, which immediately piques Mukoda's interest in trying new monster recipes. When Mukoda asks about the price, the shopkeeper tells him it costs 860 gold. Mukoda almost gets a heart attack from this price, but Fell pushes him to buy it since his bottomless pit of a stomach craves new food. As the others also put pressure on Mukoda, he finally agrees to buy the magic stove. Later that night, Mukoda cooks dinner in some huge stock pots. He asks Sui for some help and starts serving some tender bull meat to his party. The next day, Mukoda decides to cook a few days worth of food before entering the dungeon. For his first dish, he decides to braise some orc general meat. Then, Mukoda makes some red boar cabbage rolls, after which he makes a simple beef and veggie stir-fry. As he adds the ingredients to the stir-fry, he feels satisfied to use up all his remaining ingredients. Then, he adds a ton of vegetables, spices, and meat to a large bowl, before boiling it to make a nice orc meat soup. After that, he makes a wyvern stew with a rich gravy, but Fell gets in the way as he adds some sauce to it. With all the dishes cooked up, Mukoda thinks they're ready for the first few days in the dungeon. His hungry companions get excited to dig in, but he reminds them that all the food is meant for the dungeon. Afterward, Mukoda is cleaning his room. When Sui comes in with a sword he forged for him, Mukoda admires the blade's sharpness, thinking that with this sword, he should be safe in the dungeon. Sui climbs up his shoulder, happy to help his master, but Yuger knocks on their door for an urgent task. He explains that the earth dragon has been completely processed, so Mukoda leaves to prepare his goods before going to the guild. However, Yuger stops him, saying he's too busy to wait for him at the door. Feeling bad for the man, Mukoda heads to the Adventurers Guild, where he finds Elrond gushing over some shiny bottles of dragon blood. Elrond keeps ignoring Mukoda, obsessed with the blood, so Mukoda tries to get his attention. When Elrond finally realizes that Mukoda is waiting for him, he proudly shows off the mountains of dragon materials he got from the processing, saying the past few days were the best of his life. He asks Mukoda if he can buy some of the materials for the guild. Of course, Mukoda agrees since he became broke after buying the magic stove. Excited, Elrond asks him to buy 2 bottles of dragon blood, revealing that they are used to make the most powerful healing potions in the market. He also asks to buy half of the liver, since it has an even more potent effect than its blood. Finally, Elrond asks Mukoda if he can have one of the dragon's fangs to create an amazing sword. Mukoda agrees to sell him all the items, but wonders why Elrond is only buying just a few materials. In response, Elrond reveals that just these few items will empty the guild's entire treasury, so he can't afford to buy anything else. He offers to pay Mukoda close to 4,000 gold coins for all the precious materials, which he happily accepts. Mukoda feels shocked that just a tiny couple of materials were worth so much, and wonders how much total money he can get if he sells the entire dragon. Meanwhile, Fell isn't very impressed since he can't see any dragon meat. He suspects that Elrond is keeping it for himself, and ends up threatening him. However, Elrond calmly explains that he is storing the meat in a special cooling room to keep it fresh. He takes Mukoda and the others inside, where they find an intricate magic ice setup that is storing the tons of meat. As Fell feels satisfied with his prize, Sui helps Mukoda load up all the meat into his storage. While he finishes loading the meat, Elrond shyly asks if he can taste some of the dragon's meat as well. Mukoda nods, remembering his promise to share some meat with him, and the rest of his gang also gets excited to try out the exotic flavors. Delighted, Elrond takes Mukoda to his own house so he can easily cook the meat for them all. Mukoda settles for Elrond's lawn, where he takes out the giant magic stove. Elrond is surprised to see that Mukoda has access to such advanced technology. When he notices Mukoda using his item box, Elrond tries to show off that he has one too. This is the first time Mukoda has ever seen someone else with an item box besides himself. Elrond explains that elves can naturally use high-level magic, but he also combined his wind and forest magic talents to become a top-class adventurer back in his days. As Elrond keeps rambling, Mukoda ignores him and starts cooking. First, he rubs some salt and pepper all over the giant slabs of dragon meat before peeling the vegetables for the dish. After chopping some onions and carrots, Mukoda loads up a cooking dish with the meat and veggies, then pours some olive oil and seasoning over it. Finally, he puts the prepared meat into the oven and waits for it to roast the whole whole dish as the oven works its magic. Mukota's familiars continue drooling over the delicious smell. As he watches them, Fel and Elran start rubbing against each other while trying to get even closer to the oven. Once the food is done, Mukota takes out the roasted meat and places it on a table for everyone. He pokes the meat with a toothpick, finding out that it's cooked perfectly. As Mukota slices the roast meat into thinner stripes, he remembers to finish it off with a drizzle of Fel's favorite garlic sauce. After that, he tells everyone to dig in, and they scream in joy before they can even eat. While everyone devours the dragon, Mukota sits down and takes a bite of his own portion. The meat's exotic flavor sends a jolt through his senses, and he marvels at how dragon meat can blend the taste of so many different kinds of meat. As Mukota realizes why Fel was so excited to try the dragon's meat, the monsters don't even stop to talk as they continue gulping their food down. Fel thinks that he should hunt a few more dragons for the future, worried that the dragons would go extinct. Mukota warns Fel not to go overboard. Soon, everyone finishes their first serving and immediately asks Mukota for seconds. As Mukota hands out the other portions, he asks Dora if he's okay with cannibalism. The pixie dragon reminds him that he's a different species from Earth dragons, so it doesn't actually count. As Mukota ignores Dora's questionable morals, he notices Elrond crying at his chair. The elf thanks Mukota for allowing him to experience such a heavenly meal, thinking he's truly blessed that he got to process and eat one of the rarest creatures on the planet. Seeing Elrond's insane amounts of joy, Mukota is creeped out, but they soon finish their entire meal. On the way back home, Fel feels energetic from all the nutritious meat he just ate. Excited, he announces that they'll visit the dungeon tomorrow, so Mukota decides to send his offerings to gods in case he forgets later. Later that night, he browses through the dessert section of his online grocery store while the goddesses watch him in anticipation. Watching them wait, Vahan asks Ninrir if she granted Mukota a defensive skill. She says that she just gave him a wind blessing. Vahan points out that she was too stingy with her blessings, saying that Mukota could get hurt without proper defense. As the girls stare in dread, Vahan asks them what they'll do if somehow Mukota loses his life in the dungeon. Hephaestus reminds them that Mukota is their only key to otherworldly treats, and the girls remain silent. Suddenly, Ninrir goes into panic mode, realizing she needs to protect her living sweets dispenser at all costs. The rest of the girls also realize their mistake, so Hephaestus tells them that he's been brewing a special blessing for Mukota. Meanwhile, Mukota wonders what the fuss is all about, and he starts sending his offerings to them. However, Hephaestus talks about giving him a buff, which Mukota firmly refuses. He doesn't want to get tied down to another god, and this angers Hephaestus. He gives Mukota the blessing without his consent, and Vahan laughs, happy that he can extort more drinks out of him. The rest of the girls also celebrate, happy that Mukota is now safe. The next day, he goes back to the dungeon's entrance with his party. There, he meets the nonchalant receptionist from his first town, and she introduces herself as Vainka. Mukota wonders why she changed cities, and she explains that the Dolan Guild requested help from other guilds since this dungeon has become a popular spot lately. As she calmly finishes the registration, Mukota realizes that she's just there to look at Fel the Fluffball. When he leaves with his party, Vainka steals a glance at Fel, completely in love with him. As they stand at the dungeon's entrance, Dora and Sui feel excited for a challenge. Mukota gulps nervously as he looks down the dark entrance, so Fel reminds him there's no way they're turning back now. After gathering his courage, Mukota finally heads down the staircase. As they make their way down the first level, Fel sniffs out some weak monsters in the area. Mukota notes that the strongest monsters and loot are around the 10th and 15th levels, so Fel tells him to hop on his back to skip ahead to the good part. Ignoring his master's terrified screams, the Fenrir dashes through the dungeon halls, plowing through every monster in his path. Suddenly, an arrow shoots out of nowhere and almost turns Mukota into monster poop. Luckily, Fel's barrier blocks the arrow, and he tells Mukota that he randomly stepped on a trap. Mukota wonders how the dungeon has these carefully planted traps, even though it's a natural structure. Fel explains that each dungeon is like a living creature that attracts humans with treasures, so it can kill them with monsters and absorb their nutrients. While Fel continues his explanation, stronger arrows bang on the barrier, scaring Mukota to his wit's end. One of the traps even triggers a giant pitfall, but Fel uses a wind spell to glide over it. As the arrogant Fenrir mocks the dungeon for its pathetic traps, Dora and Sui praise him for his skills. After a lot of running, Fel finally reaches the dungeon's 10th floor. Mukoda asks Fel what he wants to do, so he responds that the monsters are still too weak on this level. Knowing that the level's boss is just a venom tarantula, Dora feels bored since it can mow them down like house spiders. To advance deeper, Fel heads straight toward the boss room. When they arrive, they find a group of adventurers trembling in fear at the sight of him. Mukoda quickly tells them that Fel is his familiar, so they calm down. He asks why they're all gathered outside the room's gate, so the adventurers explain that the dungeons have a lot of unspoken rules. It turns out that before one party finishes fighting a boss, the others cannot enter its room. The only way others can enter is if the party asks for help, but even then, they would get all the loot from the boss's drops. After explaining this, the adventurers warn Mukoda that there are bad parties out there who steal monster drops from other people's victories, with one more thing to worry about. Mukoda sits down to wait while the other parties fight the boss. A short while later, his familiars start getting bored, but Mukoda reminds them to be patient. Soon, the final group runs out of the room and tells Mukoda he can go in. He wonders why they're returning from the floor instead of heading deeper, so the adventurers explain that higher level monsters are too strong for them. Understanding their reasons, Mukoda nods and heads inside, where the room turns pitch black. As the terrifying venom tarantula roars at them, Mukoda starts screaming like a girl, but Dora fries it with a fireball. The proud dragon flies around, happy to have his powers enhanced by the god of war's blessing. As the boss's corpse disappears, a bunch of valuable drops spawn from it. Mukoda picks up a bare spider leg, and he realizes that the dungeon automatically processes the items, so he gets the best parts. Despite his exhaustion, Fel rushes him to the next level, where they meet a terrifying orc general as the final boss. Before Mukoda can even finish feeling scared, his gang turns the orc into pork chops. After the 11th floor, their party continues exploring deeper, but everyone gets tired from using their mana. Noticing their hunger, Mukoda wonders where they should set up their dinner, so Fel scouts for an open room. When they reach the open room, they find a bunch of parties resting in the safe space. As Mukoda's group sits down in a corner, they're unexpectedly greeted by Werner's party. Surprised to see a familiar face, Werner shakes Mukoda's hand, who feels happy to meet some old friends. As they all sit down together, Werner explains that his party recently entered the city to explore the dungeon. Mukoda tells them that he was supposed to visit the ocean town of Berlin, but Fel was itching to explore the dungeon first. As they laugh at Fel's antics, the party notices Mukoda's new familiars. They get interested in Dora, so Mukoda informs them that he's a pixie dragon. Then, they ask about Sui, so Mukoda proudly calls it his favorite slime-shaped nuclear warhead, falling in love with the monster's cuteness. The two girls immediately start gushing over Sui and Dora. Werner wonders how Mukoda ended up with two more exotic pets besides Fel, but Mukoda reminds them that they're just a bunch of selfish gluttons who followed him for the food. Laughing at his own misery, Mukoda decides to share some of his dinner with the party. Knowing that the food costs 10 times his net worth, Werner hesitates, but agrees to share since he doesn't want to give it up either. Seeing that Werner's party has some bread, Mukoda takes out his wyvern stew to serve with it. For a little bit, the party hesitates to eat the precious cuisine, but they immediately gulp it down after getting a bite. As they all praise the heavenly cooking, Mukoda feels happy. But then everyone asks what meat he used for the stew. When he reveals it's wyvern meat, the poor party almost chokes in shock. Werner apologizes to Mukoda for eating such a precious ingredient, so he explains that Fel and Sui hunted about 3 truckloads worth of wyverns. Seeing that he has so much meat left, they hesitate, but eventually ask for another delicious serving. After everyone's done eating, Werner's party gets up to explore the floor a bit more. Mukoda wishes them good luck, and they leave, so Fel reminds him to get moving to the deeper floors. Soon, they start plowing through the deeper levels, treating the poor dungeon bosses like stray dogs. Once they enter the 16th floor, Mukoda notices that the atmosphere of the dungeon has become much more sinister. Fel explains that all dungeons change as you go deeper, but he suddenly steps on a trap tile as the entire dungeon starts shaking. Mukoda clings to Fel, who notices a huge boulder dropping from a trap behind him. Of course, Mukoda starts running like a chicken before Fel shatters the boulder with a wind blast. The force of the blast knocks Mukoda flat on his face before he gets up again. After a while, Meanwhile, the party arrives at the 20th floor, and Dora asks Mukoda if he's impressed with their strength. Mukoda doesn't care about his family's strength, but he stops when Sui calls out to him, showing a secret area in a wall. When Mukoda inspects the hole, he finds a treasure chest hidden in it, so he starts singing praises for Sui, delighted to get some good loot. Before he can carelessly open the chest, though, Fel pulls him back, reminding him that the chest could be a trap. Sure enough, when Mukoda uses his appraiser on the treasure chest, he finds out that it's trapped with a poisonous gas that would give him conditions much worse than lung cancer. Disappointed, Mukoda gives up on opening the chest, but Fel offers to open it for him since his major blessing can protect him from the poison. Before Fel can open the chest, Mukoda receives a message from Ninrir, informing him that since he already has 3 minor blessings from her girls, he should be able to withstand the poison without a problem. As she happily tells him to enjoy the dungeon's exciting challenges to the fullest, Mukoda gets up and tells Fel that his 3 minor blessings now have the effect of a major one. Knowing he's safe, Mukoda opens the chest, which instantly releases a burst of noxious gas. After the gas clears, Mukoda looks into the chest, but finds it completely empty. Angered that he got tricked, he gets the motivation to head deeper into the dungeon and get real treasure this time. After exploring the 21st floor for a bit, Mukoda finds an even larger treasure chest, and Fel notes that it must have something special inside. This time, Mukoda scans the chest before opening it and finds out that it's just a disguised mimic. However, with the 3 lethal familiars following him, he gets the confidence to open the chest and get its loot. He decides to take out his mithril sword and step forward to open the chest, only for it to reveal a fanged mouth and lunge at them. Scared out of his mind, he mindlessly slashes his sword at the mimic, which turns into a bunch of plywood from his attacks. Soon, the defeated mimic turns into a real treasure chest, and Mukoda opens it to find a bunch of precious jewels and accessories inside. Nearby, Dora finds the door to the 22nd floor, so they all head down through it. This time, Mukoda is shocked to see that the floor opens up to a vast open sky instead of the walled corridors they had been exploring. Even Fel gets excited to see what the new flue has to offer, but Mukoda feels scared that it might have an unexpected danger they can't handle. However, Fel detects someone familiar in the area, so he starts rushing towards them. After running for a bit, he stops at a clearing where a swarm of giant killer mantis ambushes them. The mantises scare Mukoda, but Fel easily burns them all to a crisp. While Mukoda wonders why he even bothers getting scared, Dora and Sui start yelling at Fel for giving them no chances to fight. Seeing them all argue, Mukoda tells everyone that they should take turns fighting so all of them can enjoy themselves. They all agree to his reasonable advice. So when the group encounters a bear next, Dora enters the battlefield. The excited dragon pierces through the bear's body like a knife, while Sui faces a horde of poison butterflies next. Fel warns him that the butterflies can paralyze it to suck all of its bodily fluids, but Sui simply melts them all with its pew-pew lasers. After a while of walking through the floor, Fel detects that the presence from before is getting closer. Before he can go check it out, Mukoda stops him, thinking it's probably the floor's boss. He suggests they boost their stats first by eating some food from his online store. Fel knows that they're strong enough to handle the boss anyway, but he doesn't give up the chance to have some extra treats. As they sit down to order, Mukoda decides to get some premium wagyu along with a bunch of other delicacies. Watching him stack orders upon orders of mouth-watering dishes, the group create a flood with their drooling mouths. Once all the food arrives, they scarf it down in an instant before asking for seconds. Surprised by their speed, Mukoda gives them the second batch and sits down to eat some of his own, before he can even finish his small serving, though his familiars ask him for a third serving. Once they all finish the food, the stuffed monsters plop down to rest. Mukoda decides to check Fel's stats and is surprised by a 50% stat buff. Next, he looks at Dora and Sui, who also have an insane stat buff. Mukoda wonders if he went overboard, but he thinks it's fine since they're going to face a boss anyway. However, his partners get curious to see how much his own stats have increased, so Mukoda pulls up his own stat menu. For some reason, he only got a 5% stat boost, leaving them all disappointed. After they're done looking at their buffs, the group starts walking towards the presence Fel is sensing. All three beasts feel excited to fight a real opponent, while Mukoda feels nervous. Soon, Fel is surprised as he spots an S-rank Vasuki serpent nearby. Seeing the terrifying serpent's rank, Mukoda almost has a heart attack. He notices that the serpent can spray a poisonous smog that would rot his insides, but Fel explains that he doesn't have to worry about it because of his blessings. Sui and Dora also get ready to fight the powerful beast, but Mukoda hides behind a tree like an absolute pansy. Fel reminds him that he also has a major blessing, but Mukoda isn't man enough to risk being on the battlefield. Tired of his pathetic attitude, the beasts march forward to fight the serpent. It immediately sprays its poisonous smog at them, but they all shrug it off and keep charging forward. Fel paralyzes the serpent with a lightning bolt, while Sui melts its neck with acid. Then, Dora finishes it off by piercing straight through the poor snake's neck, leaving it to fall dead. As Mukoda's murderous belly fillers celebrate their victory, he feels sick of their monstrous strength. Since the boss is defeated, Fel finds a magic circle that will teleport them to the next floor. He warns Mukoda that they all need to touch the formation at the same time to use it. Otherwise, someone could get left behind. With this advice in mind, Dora gets on top of Mukoda's head, while Sui jumps into his arms. Then, Mukoda holds Fel, who activates the magic circle with his paw. Soon, the formation grows brightly and teleports them into another cave-like space. Mukoda notices that despite looking like earlier floors, this one is massive. Fel spots a hole through one of the room's walls, so they all head through it. Inside, Mukoda spots some gigantic monsters, so Fel explains that the floor is designed to be big enough for them. Before Mukoda can even start planning how to defeat the monsters, his team heads in and obliterates them from existence. After defeating the monsters, they explore the giant floor. Because the floor is so big, everyone gets tired of walking so much. Mukoda decides to cook his familiars a special feast, but he stops after noticing a strange area. Fel detects that it's a safe space with no monsters nearby, so Mukoda decides to pull out his cooking set there. As Mukoda takes out the food, the beasts get excited to stuff their greedy faces again. They munch on delicious sandwiches and rich soups and get exhausted once they're done. Mukoda asks Fel if it's time to sleep, so he nods. Before they can rest, though, a group of injured adventurers hobbles to the safe spot. After laying down their wounded teammate, they ask Mukoda if he has some healing potions, so he quickly takes out one and rushes towards them. As the leader pours the potion over the man's wound, it instantly patches up, leaving him shocked. He wonders if Mukoda gave him a high-grade potion, so he nods, explaining that his potions are higher quality than regular ones. Then, Mukoda asks the leader if his teammate is fine, so he tells him he'll recover quickly thanks to the potion's healing. While his relieved teammates start crying, the leader introduces them as an A-rank party called Tempest. After thanking Mukoda for the potions, he offers to pay 15 gold coins for them. Mukoda thinks the payment is too much, so he offers the leader some low-grade potions for his money. The man is surprised by his kindness, and Mukoda asks if he can tell him how his teammate got injured. He reveals that they encountered 3 Spriggans in the boss room. Mukoda asks Fel if Spriggans are really that dangerous, so he tells him that a Spriggan is larger than a Minotaur. Then, the Tempest leader explains that the first time he entered this floor, there was only 1 Spriggan in the boss room. However, there were suddenly 3 of them the second time he returned, so his team got overwhelmed. However, he thinks that Mukoda will be completely fine against the Spriggans since he has the legendary Fenrir on his side. Mukoda feels awkward that even Tempest has heard about his murder puppies, but the adventurer reassures him he won't spread his secret. Then, he tells Mukoda that his party will head back to the surface in the morning. Meanwhile, Fel lazily opens his eyes and tells Mukoda to get some sleep since he'll destroy the Spriggans himself. The next morning, as Mukoda's party heads deeper into the dungeon, he wonders if Tempest can safely make it back to the surface. Fel reassures him that they'll be fine, especially since he gave them some of his stat-boosting sandwiches to help them recover their mana. Soon, they arrive at the boss's room, where Mukoda spots the Spriggans sitting cross-legged. He feels terrified of the powerful monsters, but as always, the party rushes straight in. After his familiars turn the Spriggans into fossils, Mukoda walks inside and finds a magic bag in the loot. He notices that time passes in this magic magic box just like in real life and picks it up, thinking it'll be useful. Then, as Mukoda collects the rest of the loot, he starts feeling like a thief for taking his partner's share. However, Fel doesn't care and tells Mukoda that the next floors are also filled with giant monsters. Mukoda decides to fight the bosses on the next floor, but he ends up screaming on the ground like a helpless baby. The poor boss monsters desperately try to hit him, but his perfect defense skill just nullifies all their attacks. Despite his strength, Mukoda is too terrified to actually attack the monsters, so Dora finishes them off for him. After clearing the floor, the party quickly clears the next few floors as well and heads down to the 29th floor. Mukoda is surprised that they're only 2 levels away from finishing the dungeon. Then he steps into the teleporter. When they appear on the 29th floor, Mukoda is shocked to see a giant desert stretching out before his eyes. While Mukoda feels annoyed by the harsh desert, his pets are excited to explore the new area. He gets on Fel's back to start exploring, but they all quickly lose their energy after the intense heat humbles them. As everyone stops moving, Mukoda notices Sui completely deflated on the floor and quickly scoops him up into his bag. Thankfully, Dora spots a rock nearby, so they all head over to rest under its shade. Still, Mukoda feels bothered by the unbearable heat, so Fel casts a wind barrier that keeps the hot air away from them. Mukoda is surprised that the barrier helps so much, but Fel reminds him that he can only use the barrier for a few days before his mana runs out, since they need to actually find the floor's exit in this giant desert. Mukoda decides to preserve Fel's mana by ordering some summer products. After getting a summer hoodie and sunglasses, he buys a bunch of electrolyte drinks to rehydrate everyone. After they chug the refreshing drinks, Mukoda orders some ice cream to cheer them all up. As they munch on the tasty ice cream, everyone cheers up. But reality hits them hard when they start walking in the desert again. Fel reminds Mukoda that the temperature will drop harshly at night, so they need to cover as much distance as possible during the day. As they rush through the giant desert, the party encounters some huge sandworms. Once night approaches, they all settle down near a campfire. Mukoda feels like freezing from the chilly cold, but Fel tells him that it's even colder outside his barrier. Seeing they've got no choice, Mukoda decides to order a bunch of heating pads and warm clothes for some heat. Then, he pulls out a pot to make some hot food, which gets everyone's energy up. After a long while of careful cooking, he prepares some hot udon noodles for them. As they dig into the silky noodles, the party feels their stomachs warming up. Refreshed after having the hearty noodles, Fel tells Mukoda that they're getting very close to the level's boss. Hearing this, Mukoda tells him to get a good night's rest before they fight, and they all go to sleep on some warm futons. The next morning, they find the level's final boss, which is a strong earth golem. Unfortunately for the golem, Fel shatters it into pieces with a single lightning strike. Once the boss is defeated, they find the magic circle in a giant space. Fel asks if everyone is ready for the final floor, and everyone nods. Then, he places his paw on the teleporter and activates it, which takes them straight to the dungeon's final boss. Fel notes that the monster is a behemoth, and the party gets amped up for the fight. Dora flies up and tosses Sui towards the monster, who shoots some acid at it. Then, Dora charges into the behemoth, but it easily knocks both of them back into the dungeon's walls. Mukoda rushes to check on his injured teammates, who note how tough the boss is. Fel explains that behemoths are naturally resistant to both physical and magical attacks, but they still take a bit of damage from each hit. Suddenly, the monster charges at them, so they all avoid it as it rams into a wall. Fel tells them to attack at full strength to break the behemoth's defenses, so the party members all attack together. Mukoda notices that the behemoth looks unharmed, but Fel reassures him that it will get weakened with each hit. He tells Sui and Dora to continue attacking, so they all gang up on the behemoth and continue pummeling it with small attacks. The huge monster roars in fury as it fails to hit any of its smaller foes. Then, Dora charges up some massive ice spikes, which finally dig into the behemoth and make it bleed for the first time. Encouraged by their progress, Dora and Sui think they're going to win. Suddenly, the behemoth starts charging up a hyper beam and shoots it straight at Mukoda. Thankfully, Fel saves him with a sturdy ice wall. He notes that Dora's attack was so effective because Sui's acid weakened the behemoth's armor where it hit. With this information in mind, Fel tells Sui to shower the behemoth in acid. The slime obeys, enlarging to a massive size before dousing the poor boss in an acid bath. The strong acid melts through the behemoth's tough armor, allowing Dora to wound it even more with his attacks. Once the behemoth is weakened enough, enough. Fel tells Sui and Dora to step back. He unleashes his ultimate lightning bolt, which strikes the behemoth square in its weak point. The monster roars in pain before finally taking its last breath and collapsing to the ground. After the defeated behemoth disappears, everyone celebrates their massive win, and Mukoda rushes to check its loot. He finds a legendary sword called Kalidbolg and draws it out, realizing that it'll make the headlines if news leaks out. As Mukoda puts the sword in his item box, Fel tells him to serve food since he's tired. Mukoda wonders why they can't go home first, but Fel is too impatient to wait. Finally, Mukoda agrees to reward his party for their hard work and starts preparing a massive fried food feast. They all dig in, happy to enjoy themselves after an exhausting day. After finishing their meal, Mukoda and the gang burst out of the floor near the dungeon's entrance. The surrounding adventurers get confused by their sudden appearance, so Mukoda explains they were just returning from the last floor. As they all stare in shock, Fel proudly declares that they've just conquered the full dungeon. Mukoda feels awkward since he didn't want to draw any attention, but it's already too late. While the adventurers start bombarding Mukoda with questions about the bosses and loot, Elran suddenly appears out of nowhere. He congratulates Dora for his performance and drags Mukoda away, explaining that they need to submit a form to the Adventurers Guild to complete their exploration. Once they return to the guild, Elran starts praising Dora again, so Mukoda points out that Fel and Sui equally contributed to their victory. While the dragon maniac annoys Dora in the background, Yuger asks Mukoda about the kind of items they found in the dungeon. Fel interjects, saying he wants his food first, but Mukoda tells him to be patient. Then, he reaches into his bottomless storage and pulls out the Mimic's jewelry box. As they look at the box, both Yuger and Elran jump in shock since Mimics are rare creatures with very precious loot. Watching their stunned reaction, Mukoda realizes he should definitely keep the legendary sword from the last level completely secret. Then, Elrand asks Mukoda for a full report about the dungeon, but Yuger reminds him to give the tired team some time to rest. Afterward, Mukoda prepares a bath and drinks some coffee milk while sharing it with his living monster meat processors. He tells everyone to take a bath after the drink, but Fel refuses to get inside. Mukoda reminds Fel that if he doesn't take a shower, he'll end up stinking worse than a redditor. Mukoda's insult is already too much for the mythical dog. But then Sui and Dora also say he'll look like trash if he keeps this up. Although Fel feels pressured by their persuasion, suddenly he gets distracted by a noise. Mukoda thinks he's trying to change the subject, but Dora tells him he also heard it. Nearby, two kids are running away from a monstrous orc. Suddenly, the little girl trips, helpless in front of the charging beast. Luckily, Mukoda arrives just in time and sends Sui and Dora forward. The two of them turn the orc into factory meat, saving the little siblings' lives. Soon, Mukoda comes running to check on the kids, but they get terrified after seeing the giant Fenrir behind him. Mukoda tries to comfort the kids and tells them that Fel is just a glorified house dog, which pisses him off. Finally, the kids realize their lives are saved, and they start crying as the shock wears off. This surprises Mukoda, and he tries to comfort them as much as he can. After they calm down, he asks the kids about their names. The boy introduces himself as Daryl and his little sister as Iris. He tells Mukoda they're from Dolan, which shocks him since Dolan is 3 hours away from the forest. He wonders why the kids aren't with their parents, which leaves them silent. They tell Mukoda they'll answer his question if they give them the orc, so he agrees. However, Mukoda wonders how the little children will carry such a large creature, so Daryl reveals he can use his item box skill. The little boy tries to fit the orc through his storage, but its giant body is too big to shove inside. Mukoda tells him he'll help him fit the orc inside, so he asks the kids to explain their story to him. Daryl explains that he and Iris live with their mother in Dolan, while their father was an adventurer. One day, his father went to the dungeon and never returned, so the mother and the kids were left all alone. Although the three of them did their best to survive, their mother fell ill one day. Mukoda wonders if their mother is doing better, so Dylan tells him that they brought her to a priest. Although she felt a bit better after the priest's healing healing spell, she fell sick again after a while. The priest told the kids he couldn't cure her illness, so they needed a higher level priest from the royal capital. Unfortunately, the little children didn't have the money to call a priest from the capital, so they were left all alone, trying to sell herbs from the forest to pay for their mother's treatment. Hearing their painful story, even Mukoda tears up, while the kids think the orc will finally give them enough money for their mother's treatment. However, Mukoda knows that orcs are just common monsters, so the children have nowhere near enough money. As he wonders how to help the innocent children, their hungry bellies suddenly growl. Fel and the rest of the gang also tell Mukoda they want to eat, so he decides to make them a meal before doing anything else. The kids offer to help Mukoda cook, but he tells them he'll handle it. Thinking they're very good kids, he sends them away to play with Dora and Sui. As the kids play with the monsters, Mukoda decides to give them a real treat. He chops some onions and caramelizes them before frying some cicatrice meat. Then, Mukoda adds some teriyaki sauce to the meat and fries some eggs on the side. After that, he prepares a bun with veggies, cheese, and the teriyaki meat, and completes a mouth-watering burger. As soon as the kids get the burgers, they fall in love with their delicious taste. While they greedily devour the burgers, Mukoda gives them some drinks as well. Meanwhile, Fel gets annoyed that he hasn't received his own portion, so Mukoda gives him a gigantic stack of burgers. After getting their burgers, the group gang also eats their burgers, and everyone gets a satisfied belly at the end. Afterward, as Mukoda cleans the dirty dishes, the kids thank him for his gift. Although Mukoda feels touched by the pure souls thanking him, his pride gets hurt since they called him uncle. Hearing that Mukoda has become his uncle, Fel gets a smug face and taunts him. Sometime later, the children take a nap on Fel's soft fur. Mukoda drapes a blanket over them, feeling bad that the little ones have to work such dangerous jobs for their mother. While the kids sleep, Darrell speaks about helping his mom, which tugs right at Mukoda's heartstrings. He thinks about buying his mother's medicine from the online supermarket, but wonders which one to get since he doesn't know her illness. Instead, Mukoda decides to use some high-grade potions, but Fel informs him that potions only treat wounds, not illnesses. This surprises Mukoda, so Fel tells him he needs elixirs for the sick mother. However, elixirs are a rare medicine supposed to cure all illnesses, so Mukoda thinks there's no way he can get them. Then, he remembers Elrond's words that a dragon's blood can be used to create rare elixirs. With this in mind, he gives Sui some of the dragon's liver and blood, then asks the slime if he can create an elixir. After checking the ingredients, Sui tells Mukoda he can't do it for sure, but dissolves them inside his body to try anyway. As Sui gets to work processing the elixir, Mukoda leaves to make some food for the children's mother. After considering easy to digest yet nutritious meals, he decides to make a healthy meat soup. First, Mukoda chops the veggies and meat for the soup before stir-frying them all together. Then, he adds the water and broth before pouring in some soy milk as well. Once the ingredients are added, Mukoda cooks them until the soup is done. Holding the pot of hearty soup in his hands, Mukoda thinks it'll be a great treat for the kids and their mom. Nearby, Sui gets done with the elixirs and gives Mukoda 3 bottles of them. Dora wonders if Sui could even create a real elixir, so Mukoda checks its stats. After taking a look, he finds out that the bottles truly contain rare elixirs for all illnesses, which leaves him completely stunned. Overjoyed, he praises his living factory for the good work and runs off to the kids with Fel. He tells them they're going back to Dolan and puts them on Fel's back for the ride. Once the kids are on, Mukoda gets on top of Fel and reminds him to go slowly for the children. Fel nods and starts running at a graceful pace before speeding up to give the kids a fun ride. A short while later, they reach Dolan and the kids celebrate their ride. As Mukoda starts pulling out their orc from their storage, they remember selling it at the guild to pay for the priest's service. However, Mukoda tells them he found a rare medicine that can cure their mom, which gets them excited. He tells them he can't give them the precious medicine for free, so they feel a bit scared. Mukoda then says that since he's a merchant, they need to trade something for this medicine. Darrell asks him how much it costs. Mukoda tells them that only a giant monster like the orc can pay for his rare medicine, so they happily agree to exchange it. Once they agree, he gives Iris the medicine before gifting them the pot of soup. As the kids feel relieved that their mother's going to be okay, they start crying. After calming down a bit, Darrell tells Mukoda that he'll grow up to become a merchant just like him. He feels inspired to use his item box skill for his goods and make good deals just like Mukoda. The little boy's fierce determination brings even Mukoda to to tears, and he wishes both kids the best of luck. Afterward, the kids thank Mukoda for his help and leave happily, while Mukoda feels glad he could help them. Then, he remembers that they were just returning from clearing the dungeon, so he decides to throw a celebration party. Before cooking, he checks everyone's levels and finds out that they've gained a massive amount of them. The best of them is Sui, who has quadrupled his level from a tiny 22 to an incredible 88. Seeing that his pets have grown so much, Mukoda takes a look at his own stats. Unfortunately, he's still about as strong as a broken twig, but finds out that his online grocery skill has gained 1 level. After clicking on the grocery skill, Mukoda sees 2 new tenants, which gives him the option to choose between 2 specializations. While Mukoda gets confused by the options, Fel and the others get curious. They ask him what he's doing, so Mukoda tells them he doesn't know which skill tree to pick. Fel tells him to pick the burger skill, but Sui likes sweets more, so Mukoda chooses the sweets option. Fel gets angry that Mukoda just tossed his opinion into the trash like a used tissue, but Mukoda reminds him that he's a pig for sweets. Anyway, as the new sweets menu opens up, everyone starts drooling over the premium cakes in front of them. Mukoda picks a few options and orders a big box and takes out a takeaway box from it. After opening all of the takeaway boxes, Mukoda lays out a bunch of premium cakes and pies on their dinner table. Then, he gives everyone a slice of each, and they all dig in with gusto. While his familiars chomp away at the delicious cakes, Mukoda tells them he's got some lovely custard pudding as well. He places the jiggly pudding on a plate for them and takes out a cream roll for himself. As Mukoda downs some black coffee with the cream roll, Fel judges him for drinking the bitter liquid. Mukoda defends his choice, saying that the coffee's bitterness goes great with the cream's sweet taste. Meanwhile, Sui and Dora demand more pudding, but Mukoda tells them they'll turn into Americans if they eat too many sweets. Then, he suddenly realizes he forgot something, and Ninrir starts screaming at him through telepathy. While she throws a hissy fit at Mukoda for forgetting her offerings, the rest of the powerful gods also feel impatient. However, Mukoda completely ignores them and remembers the 2 kids, feeling bad that they can't taste the exquisite sweets. The next day, Elrond throws a feast for all the adventurers to celebrate the dungeon's conquest. Mukoda watches, stunned as Elrond carefully instructs each of his employees to process the various ingredients. He realizes just how much time the busy guild master has been taking out for him, but wonders if Elrond has completely forgotten him. Suddenly, Uger enters the room and angrily asks Elrond why he isn't doing his job. While the elf gets terrified, Uger scolds him for goofing around instead of completing a report and finishing Mukoda's tasks. Elrond meekly tells Uger he was just raising everyone's morale, but he drags him away to finish his real work. After bringing the guild master to Mukoda, Uger tells him they'll take care of his work. Then, he turns to Marcel and tells him to continue making food. As Mukoda watches Uger drag away the guild master like a naughty toddler, he realizes just how strict he is. Afterward, Mukoda and the party sit in a private room. There, Uger tells Mukoda there's a problem with one of the items he gave them, and shows him a storage bag. As Mukoda opens the bag, he finds it packed full of hundreds of precious gems. Since Mukoda didn't think a storage bag would already have items inside it, he never opened it. Even Fel is surprised that the bag came with items, and Elrond confirms that it's very rare for a storage bag to have items in it by default. Holding the precious dungeon gems, he explains that the guild cannot afford to buy so many of them at once. While Elrond feels upset that he got scolded for buying the Earth Dragon materials, Uger tells Mukoda that the Merchant Guild has requested a trade for the gems the Adventurers Guild cannot buy. Recalling the Merchant Guild's rules, Mukoda notes that they usually dislike direct trades. However, Uger tells him that this is because the guild does not want its adventurers to get scammed by the merchants, since the Adventurers Guild is officially handling this transaction. Uger thinks there's no problem doing a direct trade with the merchants. Then, he asks Mukoda if he has any experience in judging an item's value, but he shakes his head. Seeing how inexperienced he is, Uger offers to visit the Merchants Guild with him to get the best price for his goods. Suddenly, Elrond offers to visit the merchants instead, saying that Uger needs his free time since he's so busy. However, Uger immediately sees through his act and yells at him for skipping work once again. He firmly tells Elrond to stay back and do his job, or else he'll sell his most precious item. Shocked, Elrond tells Uger he'll never let him sell his precious dragon fang even if his life depended on it. Finally, Elrond agrees to stay behind, but Mukota's bottomless stomach pets get hungry. Mukota asks Uger if they can eat before visiting the Merchants Guild, and Uger tells him to meet him again in 2 hours. Since 2 hours isn't enough, Mukota decides to buy food instead of cooking everything from scratch. The group walks through the streets, and Fel gets interested in some grilled meat. Mukota stops at the meat stall, but the poor owner gets terrified of all the hungry pets behind him. After reassuring the owner that the monsters are his familiars, Mukota asks his pets how much food they want. Fel and Sui think they can easily skin 30 of the meat skewers, while Dora decides to go for 15 instead. After getting all their orders, Mukota tells the stall owner to make 76 skewers. Shocked by the massive order, the man decides to give Mukota a discount. However, he refuses to accept the discount, knowing his giant monsters are blocking the poor man's business anyway. Soon, the man hands over the first batch of skewers, so Mukota hands them over to his familiars. As they eat the grilled meat, the group notice that it's not as good as Mukota's cooking. Despite that, they enjoy the meat's taste since it has its own unique flavor. Seeing them enjoy the meat, Mukota takes a bite of his own skewer. He thinks that the charcoal produces a great texture and flavor, and wonders how good his own precious monster meats would taste when grilled. Then, Mukota realizes he can put even more delicious seasonings on his meat from the online supermarket and gets excited to do a barbecue. However, he doesn't have a barbecue grill, and the online grocery store doesn't sell one either. As he thinks about what to do, Mukota gets the idea to make Sui create a grill for him. Unfortunately, Sui hasn't seen a grill before, so he wonders how he'd make it. Soon, everyone gets done cleaning their plates, so they all head to the Merchants Guild. While they're waiting in the guild with Uger, the Merchant Guild master, Adriano, comes to greet them. He invites everyone to a private room, but Mukota hesitates, wondering if his terrifying familiars should stay outside. Adriano insists he bring them along, so Mukota agrees. Once inside the private room, they meet the guild's appraiser, Ruslan. Once they sit down, Uger presents a briefcase full of the dungeon gems. Seeing the gems' bright luster, both merchants stifle a shocked gasp. Ruslan takes a ruby and observes it carefully, shocked by its quality. After looking at the rest of the gems, he declares that they're all jewels of the highest quality. Uger nods and shows him the mimic chest. As Ruslan's gaze falls on the chest, he takes out an imperial topaz gem from it, amazed to see one with such a bright glow. Both merchants stare in awe as they examine the shiny gem, knowing it will sell for an absurd amount. Hearing the merchants' praise, even Mukota is surprised that they're rating his goods so highly. After evaluating their value, Adriano offers Mukota a total of more than 7,000 gold coins. The price leaves Mukota stunned and impressed, and he's about to accept the deal until Uger suddenly stops him. Since he has some knowledge about rare items, Uger reminds the merchants that their imperial topaz is a rare item that sells for huge profits to collectors. He also points out that even though all their mimic gems are top quality and perfectly symmetrical, the guild still low-balled the price. While the merchants realize they've been caught, Uger tells them he won't even consider their pathetic bid. Since they're trying to trick a member of his adventurer guild, he threatens to cut off the relations between their two guilds, so the merchants start panicking. They finally reconsider the price and raise their offer to over 9,000 gold coins. Mukota asks Uger if the amount is fair, and Uger is finally satisfied. With his approval, they sell the gems for 9,500 gold coins. Mukota then thanks Uger for saving him the extra 2,000. After finishing the deal, they return to the Adventurers Guild, where Elrond acts like he could have gotten Mukota 10,000 more gold coins if he had gone with him. Since nobody takes him seriously, he quiets down. Then, Elrond asks Mukota to show his guild card. As he takes out his card, Elrond quickly swipes it and replaces it with a golden card. Mukota wonders what he just did, so Elrond explains that he promoted him to a rank for conquering the dungeon. Uger explains that Mukota can now directly accept quests from the kingdom with his new rank, but the pansy man doesn't want to go through so much trouble. He quickly begs Elrond to demote him back to C rank, but the guild master informs him that a rank adventurers get 10 free meals at the guild's high-quality restaurant, as well as permanent in discounts, and the ability to accept quests of any rarity and rewards. Hearing that they can take new quests to hunt for exotic meat and materials, Fel instantly tells Mukota to accept the promotion. Feeling the pressure from both sides, Mukota finally accepts his fate. Afterward, he returns returns home and fires up the magic stove. Dora asks him what's for dinner, so Mukoda tells him he's cooking some ground meat, while the group celebrate their upcoming meat buffet. Mukoda finishes taking out the ingredients. As he takes out the ground meat from his storage, he recalls that his old meat grinder broke apart. Thankfully, Sui managed to create a mithril meat grinder for him, so he ended up making tons of ground meat with the new machine. Since he has so much to spare, Mukoda decides to make giant loaves of roasted meat. First, he puts some breadcrumbs in milk to soften them. Then, he chops some onions before sautéing them in a pan. After the onions are ready, Dora adds some mixed vegetables to continue sautéing. Once the mixture is done, Mukoda adds it to his ground meat before adding whisked eggs and seasoning to the bowl. Then, he kneads the meat into a ball and layers his roasting trays with bacon strips. Once the bottom is ready, he stuffs the trays with ground meat before adding his veggies and eggs in the middle. He then stuffs even more meat on top of the veggies and folds the strips on top once the loaves are completed. Finally, Mukoda covers the trays with aluminum foil before putting them in his oven to cook. After a while, he takes out the cooked meat and tests it with a toothpick to make sure it's cooked. Since the meat is ready, he makes some sauce with butter, ketchup, and chuno sauce. After cooking the sauce in his pan, he cuts the loaves into strips and drizzles the sauce over them. Finally, the meatloaves are done, and everyone gets ready to dig in. As his familiars eat, they chomp away without sparing a minute to talk. Seeing them enjoy the food so much, Mukoda thinks it must have been cooked perfectly. He takes his own plate and takes a bite, instantly falling in love with the rich food. Afterward, everyone stuffs themselves full, and Mukoda thinks about giving Yuger a gift for all his help. Knowing that Yuger has a wife and kids, he decides to get some premium sweets for his family. After ordering the sweets, Mukoda checks them to make sure they don't boost the stats too much. Meanwhile, Ninir feels outraged that Mukoda is ordering so many precious sweets without giving her a single one. While she screams that she'll make him pay, the others discuss that his new skill tree has increased the quality of items he can buy as well. Thinking about all the exotic goods they can get from Mukoda's world, they start planning which ones they want to get from him. The next day, while Elran slaves away at his desk, Mukoda offers a basket of baked sweets to Yuger. He takes the basket, but notices a girl's face on one of the cookies. Mukoda tells him it's just a symbol, but Yuger thinks that the girl might be a princess from his country. He wonders if it's okay to eat such precious sweets, but Mukoda reassures him it's fine. Finally, Yuger happily accepts the gifts, thinking his wife and kids would love the sweet treats. Later, Fel asks Mukoda what's for lunch, but he reminds his greedy dog that he just had breakfast half an hour ago. Fel claims that he's just checking the menu, but Mukoda reminds him that he's the one who has to cook all their king-sized 5-star meals. Dora gets panicked, thinking he won't get Mukoda's treat for the day, while Sui also says he loves his master's cooking the most. Mukoda reassures his familiars he'll cook for them, but explains that he just wants a break since he's tired of cooking every day. As Fel asks Mukoda how he's going to cook on a break, he realizes he didn't explain it correctly. Then, Mukoda reveals that he just wants to grill some barbecue for the day since it's easier than cooking fancy dishes. Fel thinks about his offer for a bit before accepting, so Mukoda wonders how he'll grill the food without the equipment. Later, he tries asking a blacksmith to create a custom grill for him, but the dwarf kicks him out, screaming that he makes weapons, not kitchen tools. After that failure, Mukoda asks Yuger for help, but Yuger explains that Dolan's blacksmiths are very proud of their weapon-making skills because their city is full of powerful adventurers. Now, Mukoda understands why he was kicked out, and Yuger tells him that dwarves are just stubborn people in general, but they're also unhealthy drinkers. The mention of alcohol gives Mukoda an idea, and Yuger confirms it, saying he might be able to convince a dwarf to make the grill if Mukoda gives him some good booze. Then Yuger gives Mukoda additional payment for the dungeon items he sold, which he accepts before leaving to make lunch for his gang. After giving his gang a nice bowl of wyvern rice, he opens up the online grocery. Looking through the options, Mukoda thinks it's better to give the dwarves something strong to lower their guard. After deciding on whiskey, he orders a box full of high-quality whiskey. After that, Mukoda visits a dwarf called Ailes. The dwarf asks what kind of weapon he wants, but Mukoda explains that he just needs a cooking appliance and shows him a blueprint of the grill he wants. Although the item looks quite intricate, Ailes dismisses him and tells him to leave the shop. Despite Mukoda's pleas, the blacksmith keeps walking away, so he decides it's time to use his secret weapon. He asks Ailes if he likes alcohol, and and the dwarf stops in his tracks, so Mukoda pulls out a bottle of whiskey. Right after Mukoda opens the bottle, the alcohol's aroma instantly catches Ailes's attention. Before Mukoda can even discuss anything with him, Ailes snatches the bottle away and pours out a cup to try it out himself. In an instant, he falls in love with its flavor and asks Mukoda how he got it, knowing that he's got the dwarf hooked. Mukoda acts like it's a super rare alcohol he got from an exotic island and offers to pay him 5 bottles of it if he makes him the grill. Mukoda's tempting offer finally convinces Ailes, so he agrees to make the grill if Mukoda gives him 10 bottles of whiskey. Eager to get his barbecue as soon as possible, Mukoda happily agrees. While Ailes starts chugging the bottle, Mukoda asks how long it will take to make the grill, and Ailes tells him to come back in 3 days. Then Ailes reminds him that the materials will cost 350 gold coins, so Mukoda nods and leaves. After returning home, Mukoda feels amazed that dwarves would do literally anything to get their hands on alcohol. Then, he remembers that certain powerful gods also like their booze a bit too much, and realizes he hasn't sent them any offerings in a long time. As soon as Mukoda remembers, the gods start screaming at him through telepathy. While they all discuss his punishment, Mukoda expresses his guilt and apologizes for forgetting. However, his sincere regret is not enough to calm their wrath, so Mukoda asks them to calm down and speak one at a time. First, Ninrir asks him about the tenant's skill upgrade and demands that he hand over an entire bakery's worth of premium cakes. Next, Hephaestus tells him he gave Ailes a nice booze to make Mukoda's grill extra special. He reminds Mukoda that the next time he gets a new tenant in his store, he might also unlock a liquor shop as an option. While Mukoda wonders what other exotic items he can unlock by leveling up, Hephaestus tells him that his next tenant option will become available at level 40. So both Vagon and Hephaestus tell Mukoda to level up as soon as possible, but Mukoda shakes his head since that would require lots of hard work. At that moment, Agni suggests that he enter the dungeon to level up faster, but Mukoda doesn't like the idea. Just then, Kisharl steps in and reminds her drunkard friends that it's better to have Mukoda choose a drugstore since that would give her plenty of cosmetic goods. While Mukoda feels relieved he doesn't have to become an alcoholic, Rusalka thinks he should choose a seafood market instead. Hearing them all plan ahead for his grocery store, Mukoda tells the entitled gods he's not going to grind hours of his life just to make them happy. However, they keep pressuring him to do it, so Mukoda threatens to return their blessings so he won't have to send them any more offerings. Ninrir almost faints from the shock, while Rusalka and Vagon realize they're being too impatient. Even Hephaestus admits that he was thinking about his own feelings instead of Mukoda's. Then, Kisharl reminds them all that they still need an apology gift for the number of times Mukoda forgot his offerings. As compensation for his shortcomings, she tells Mukoda to increase the amount of money he spends on their offerings. Excited to get more supplies of treats, the rest of the gods agree, so Mukoda accepts their generous offer. Once they all agree to let him stay at his current level, Mukoda asks them what they want for their next gift. First, Ninrir asks him to buy every single cake listed on the bakery, so Mukoda reminds her he's not a billionaire since she settles for choosing some of the best cakes instead. He shows her all the options. As the menu opens up, Ninrir finds it hard to decide which cake she likes more. Mukoda suggests just getting some of the cakes from the start, so she decides to go in a sequence. Then, he opens up the cosmetics section for Kisharl, while the rest of them wait impatiently since she takes too long to pick. Mukoda just picks a good item for her, so Agni butts in next. She demands a few drinks, and Rusalka tells Mukoda that she wants the same cakes Ninrir received. Finally, Hephaestus and Vagon take a look at all the goodies available. Once everyone has finished ordering, Mukoda piles up their order boxes and sends the offerings to them. While they all rejoice, he feels tired of all the yapping he was forced to go through. Since the gifts ruined Mukoda's mood, he decides to make something special for dinner. After going outside, he pulls out a giant cockatrice and rubs it with spices. Once the meat is covered with seasoning, Mukoda takes out some packets of frozen pilaf rice and stuffs the meat with it. Since the rice overflows from the bird's body, Mukoda sews the cavity shut with some skewers. Then, he ties up the bird's feet to keep it in shape, before putting oil on the rest of its body. Finally, he puts the stuffed bird into the oven and waits until it's roasted properly. While waiting for the meat to cook, Mukoda asks Sui to make some larger glasses and bowls for him. After depositing the mithril material into Sui, his slimy body starts whirring while it produces the new cutlery. Soon, Sui produces the finished cutlery, while Mukoda also finishes his roasted bird. Seeing the giant bird on the table, Fel and Dora start drooling, while Mukoda cuts it open to serve them the meat with rice. Soon, they all dig into the food, eagerly biting into the crispy meat. Fel thinks that the meat is good enough on its own, but the rice feels heavenly after being cooked in the meat and oil. Mukoda nods, but warns the gang to watch out for any sharp bones. After the main course, he takes out some puddings for dessert. Sui and Dora devour the pudding, and Mukoda wonders what to do next since he doesn't have any immediate goals. Before he can think of anything, he sits down and falls asleep from exhaustion. Meanwhile, as the gods chow away at their treats, Vagon asks Hephaestus how they should deal with Mukoda's refusal to level up. Hephaestus also wonders what to do, so Vagon suggests secretly giving Mukoda a special skill. Since Mukoda won't realize he's got the skill, Hephaestus agrees to give it to him in his sleep. Soon, Vagon points towards Mukoda's image, which secretly gives him the double experience skill. 3 days later, Mukoda visits Ailes to get his grill. As he enters the shop, the greedy dwarf immediately asks him for the alcohol, so Mukoda gives him a full crate. Once Ailes accepts the alcohol, he takes Mukoda to the back of his shop to show off the grill. It immediately pleases Mukoda, who realizes it's much bigger than it was in his blueprint. Ailes explains that Mukoda's design didn't have much capacity for holding charcoal, so he modified it for a larger area and tastier barbecue. Surprised, Mukoda asks if he should increase the payment, but Ailes keeps it down to 300 gold coins. Since he loves Mukoda's gift, Ailes tells him he doesn't mind gifting him a better product than he paid for. Then, he asks Mukoda how he'll transport the giant grill, so he explains that he has an item box. Mukoda wonders if he can test the grill first, so Ailes allows him to try it out right outside his shop. This surprises him, so Ailes reminds him that he can modify the grill if Mukoda encounters any problems using it. Fel also thinks it's a great idea to try the grill now since it'll mean a quicker lunch for him. Soon, they move the grill outside, where Mukoda takes out some meat for a barbecue. As he puts the giant slabs of meat on the grill, Dora and Sui get impatient to try it out. Mukoda reminds him that since it's a grill, he can't adjust the flame as much, so he needs to be more careful with the meat. While Mukoda focuses on his meat, Ailes puts some sausages on a free spot on the grill, explaining that they're his special homemade sausages. He offers to let Mukoda have some, happy to enjoy another treat. Mukoda offers his own barbecue to Ailes in return. Soon, Mukoda's meat is done grilling, so he cuts it into slices before plating it for everyone. Fel is the first of the group to take a bite, immediately demanding his favorite garlic sauce with the barbecue. Then, Mukoda tells Ailes to try it out, offering some wasabi sauce as a dip. As soon as Ailes takes a bite, he enjoys the treat, thinking that the wasabi freshens the oil's stickiness. Seeing him enjoy the soy sauce, Dora and Sui also dip their meat into the sauce before eating it. While the others eat, Ailes reminds Mukoda to try some sausages. Mukoda happily accepts and takes a bite, instantly enjoying the juicy flavor. Then, Ailes takes out his drink to have with the meat, so Mukoda takes the bottle from him. Quickly, he pulls to the side and takes out his mithril glass for a tastier drinking experience. Before pouring the drink, Mukoda cools the cup with fresh ice to chill it. Once the cup is cold, he fills a portion of it with the drink before adding some soda water to it. Then, he stirs the drink around the ice and garnishes it with some lemon before presenting it to Ailes. As Ailes drinks the special cocktail, he finds it absolutely delicious. Looking inside, he wonders where Mukoda got the crystal clear ice and fizzy soda water and even a mithril cup. Mukoda is surprised that the dwarf actually recognized mithril, so Ailes explains he's the best blacksmith in the entire city. Then, Ailes sits down to finish the rest of the drink, wondering how a master foodie like Mukoda conquered their city's dangerous dungeon. Mukoda wonders how he knew about him, so Ailes explains that everyone in Dolan knows about his great achievement. Surprised, Mukoda looks at his monster teammates, wondering if it was a good idea to attract so much attention with their stunts. A few days later, Mukoda tells the party that he's planning to leave Dolan. Fel doesn't mind, but tells Mukoda to visit the dungeon one last time before leaving. However, Mukoda reminds him that their dungeon stunts are the reason he needs to leave the city since they've gotten too famous. Fel realizes he's right, so he asks if he can just go on a hunt alone to get some meat. Since Mukoda knows he's been itching to get more monster meat, he allows Fel to do it. Dora also decides to join Fel for practice, so Mukoda tells them he'll make some more sausages while they go hunting. Mukoda then asks Sui to help him cook while the other two are out. Happy to help, Sui jumps into his arms, and Mukoda gets ready to make some delicious sausages. Before Fel and Dora leave, Mukoda gives them a bottomless bag to store all the monsters they hunt. He reminds them that they won't be able to process the meat before reaching the next town, so they shouldn't hunt too much. Both of them nod and leave, so Mukoda starts cooking with Sui. He asks Sui to make a special nozzle, then heads out to place an order for a few supplies from the online supermarket. First, Mukoda grinds some meat using a machine before prepping some sheep intestines for the dish. While the intestines desalinate, he adds some seasonings to the ground meat and kneads it all together. Then, Mukoda adds the cooling nozzle to a piping bag and adds the meat inside. Then, he wraps the nozzle with the sheep intestine lining and uses it to squeeze out the meat into wrapped sausages. After completely stuffing the intestines, he shapes the sausages into a nice shape, ready to cook. Afterward, Mukoda starts grilling all the sausages, satisfied with how well they're cooking. Once a sausage is done, he takes a bite and thinks it's made perfectly. Watching him eat, Sui gets excited to try it, so Mukoda gives him the rest of the sausage. Soon, Dora and Fel return from their hunt, upset that Mukoda started eating without them. He mentions that he was only tasting the food to understand how it was prepared, then proceeds to ask them how their hunt turned out. Fel tells him that he had a good hunt, but there were some monsters he couldn't fit into the bag. As Mukoda takes a look, he finds a giant tiger and a rhino monster butchered nearby. He reminds Fel he wasn't supposed to hunt too much, but the greedy dog tells him he just grabbed these monsters since they got in his way. Mukoda sighs helplessly before offering the cooked sausages to the hungry duo. As Fel and Dora both try a sausage, Sui keeps devouring them like a proper machine. Since everyone is enjoying the sausages, Mukoda decides to try one for himself. Since the sausage tastes so good, he orders a drink from the supermarket to go with it. After lunch, Mukoda and the gang prepare to leave Dolan. Both Yuger and Elrond escort them outside the city, so Mukoda feels embarrassed for burdening them. Elrond feels sad that they're leaving so early since he wanted to spend more time with Dora, but the poor dragon is creeped out by him anyway. Although Mukoda nervously laughs off Elrond's crying, the elf suddenly grips his shoulders. With an intense stare, Elrond reminds him to bring back any dragons he hunts to him for proper processing, and Mukoda assures him he'll rely solely on his services. Since Elrond also knows Mukoda intends to visit the Great Ocean, he even tells him to bring back a literal leviathan. Mukoda wonders if even Fel is strong enough to defeat a leviathan, so Fel tells him he has only defeated one in his entire life, surprised that he can actually do it. Mukoda sighs, but tells Elrond they'll only hunt the leviathan if they encounter one by chance. However, Elrond ignores his warning and starts fantasizing about butchering an entire leviathan. Watching him drool over his fantasies, Yuger tells Mukoda to ignore the deranged man and leave before he says something even more unhinged. Afterward, Mukoda leaves with the gang, stopping during their travels to have dinner and sleep. As the days go by, they soon reach a new city called Nahoth, where the guards all get hostile after seeing Mukoda and his gang of murder pigs. Luckily, Mukoda has a shiny new rank guild card from Elrond, which gets him the guards' trust. Once the guards allow him to enter, Mukoda visits the city's guild master, Gorin. Surprised to see Mukoda's legendary familiars in person, Gorin welcomes them and puts out some tea. Once they sit down to enjoy it, Gorin asks Mukoda if he'd be interested in taking a few of their tougher, high-ranked quests. Mukoda agrees, so Gorin tells him he's got two requests. First, he reveals that some carnivorous evil plants are wreaking havoc around their town's forest, so Mukoda will need to eliminate them. Then, he also asks Mukoda to take down some Cyclops monsters, since they've been plaguing the city's digging sites. Understanding the requirements, Mukoda asks his familiars if they can handle these monsters. Fel and Dora feel so bored with these weak monsters that they don't even consider them a problem. Seeing how confident everyone is, Mukoda offers to hunt the monsters the very next day. However, since he currently doesn't have anywhere to stay, he tells Gorin he's searching for a proper rental house to use during his time in the town. Gorin suggests visiting the Merchants Guild for better information. A little while later, Mukoda takes a map and walks over to the town's Merchant Guild, where he hands them a letter of recommendation from Gorin himself. Before long, the Merchant Guild's vice master, Domenico, comes out to welcome him. After giving his introduction, Domenico asks Mukoda whether he requires a larger house to fit his familiars. Mukoda nods and mentions that he'll only need it for about a week. week. When he offers to pay a generous amount for the rental, Domenico presents him with a list of 3 available places he can check out. As Mukoda looks over the 7-room, 10-room, and even a 13-room house, he wonders which one he should rent. Domenico suggests taking the 7-room house since it's large enough to support his pets while also being near the town's center. He also explains that the 7-room house is a luxury place equipped with a special kitchen, magical cooling room, and a tub, so Mukoda immediately decides to get it. Later that evening, after getting the keys to his new place, Mukoda enters the lavish mansion. While his pets appreciate getting a real house to sleep in instead of a stable, Mukoda feels a bit awkward since he has never lived like a celebrity before. Not long after, once they've settled into the living room, Mukoda walks over to the kitchen to check it out. Wondering what to make, he decides to get some potatoes and onions to cook in peace. Mukoda then gets some carrots and other spices before beginning to prep his meal. After taking out a slab of meat, he decides to make some homemade curry. First, he chops some onions and softens them in a pot. Then, he adds the meat, potatoes, and carrots. Once the ingredients are added, Mukoda pours some water for the curry and takes out any waste floating up. Then, he adds some nice curry stock into the pot, stirring it around to dissolve all the flavor. While Mukoda cooks the curry, the monsters all scooch over, curious about the new smell, since none of them has eaten curry before. Mukoda introduces them to the special dish. After plating out the cooked curry with some rice, he offers dinner to everyone. Even though they're all a little hesitant about tasting the new flavor at first, the moment the meat processors take a bite, they start digging in like crazy. While the curry feels a bit spicy, they continue shoveling it down their throats since it just tastes too good. Since Mukoda was worried they'd get put off by the spices, he feels glad that his monsters are enjoying the curry without a problem. Soon, they all finish their current plate and ask for seconds, so Mukoda plates out another portion for them. Once the monsters are devouring their second serving, Mukoda sits down to have his own dinner. Tasting the sweet and sour curry, he thinks he made a good decision to keep the spices at a medium level. After a while, everyone finishes their dinner, satisfied with the food. Once they're all done, they check out the mansion's big bath, excited to have the giant bathroom. Mukoda decides to take a bath every day. Meanwhile, Fel snoops around the corners, hoping not to get noticed, but Mukoda tells him to take a bath anyway. Although Fel tries to protest, Mukoda reminds him that he hasn't cleaned up in a while and the curry will start stinking on his fur, so he agrees to get clean. Since Fel hates stepping into the bath, he just sits on the floor while Mukoda scrubs him clean. The mighty dog enjoys getting car washed by his favorite slave, getting the soap lathered all over his fur. Once the soap is on, Mukoda asks Sui to bring him some hot water. After getting his body washed, Fel tries to creep out of the bathroom, but Mukoda reminds him to get his greasy face clean. Soon, Mukoda washes off the curry remains from Fel's stinky face, so Fel thanks him by shaking off all the water into his face. After drying himself up, Fel starts walking away in his handsome glory, ready to take a giant nap befitting a Fenrir-shaped pig like himself. Traumatized from Fel's bathwater blast, Mukoda and the other two finally get into the bathtub to clean up. After taking a nice, long soak, they all go to the bedroom to rest. Sui invites Mukoda to sleep beside him, prompting Mukoda to climb onto the king-sized bed and settle in for the night. The next day, the party heads out to the forest to hunt the evil plants. Mukoda asks Fel if he can sense the plants, so he tells him that they're all scattered throughout the area. Since the plants are scattered, Mukoda decides to split their party into 2 groups to get the job done quicker. Mukoda tells Dora and Fel to handle the plants deeper in the forest, but Fel wonders if he'll be fine on his own. Mukoda reminds him that he's going to be with Sui, which leaves him feeling disappointed that he won't get to hunt with Fel and Dora. Mukoda tells Sui that he can hunt all the plants he wants, but he just wants to travel with him for protection. Once Sui agrees to go with him, Mukoda gives Fel a bottomless bag to store any magic stones dropped by the evil plants. After Fel and Dora leave, Mukoda takes out a spray bottle, wondering if it'll help him defeat the plants. Thinking about his secret plan, he starts grinning like a creep, but Sui stops him at a strange area. Mukoda notices some broken trees scattered around the area when, all of a sudden, some bushes start rustling, and an evil plant pops out of the bushes. So Mukoda tells Sui to get ready for the fight. Sui quickly jumps and absolutely melts the poor plant, so the rest of its family comes out to avenge it. However, Mukoda decides to brutally finish them all using some powerful store-bought herbicide, which decomposes the plants alive. Watching the entire family erased from existence, Mukoda celebrates his new weapon. Soon, even more evil plants come out to attack them, but Mukoda and Sui pluck them all out like weeds. Once they defeat the giant horde, Sui warns Mukoda that a giant plant is approaching them. Just then, a huge, three-headed evil plant boss appears from the forest. It quickly sends its roots to attack Mukoda, so he repels it with the herb spray. However, the spray is unable to deal enough damage, so the plant completes its attack. Although Mukoda narrowly dodges the attack, he gets knocked to the ground by the movement. Then, the monster's three faces lunge to attack him, but he manages to wither their faces with more spray. Seeing that the spray is still effective, Mukoda focuses his attacks on the roots and finishes off the giant plant. Afterward, he counts all his spoils of war with Sui. While Sui wonders if Mukoda is okay, Fel and Dora soon return from their hunt. They tell Mukoda that although there were a lot of evil plants, they were able to defeat them all easily. Hearing this, Sui feels disappointed since he wanted to spray a lot more of his pew-pew lasers. Since they're all itching for more fights, Fel suggests hunting the Cyclops as well to complete both quests. Although Mukoda feels shocked, he is left completely helpless since everyone else is so eager. Sometime later, the group reaches the digging site where Fel and the gang obliterate all of the giant Cyclops. A littler while, Mukoda heads back home, where everyone takes another bath. As they step out, Fel notices that Sui has evolved again. Surprised, Mukoda opens up Sui's status, realizing that he's now classified as a huge slime, with a new skill called Giganticide. Mukoda asks Sui if he feels any different, so the slime tells him he can now grow to a giant size. Pleased, Mukoda tells Sui they'll test out his new form before heading to the Adventurers Guild the next day. Then, he checks Fel's stats. Noticing that he hasn't leveled up much, Fel reminds him that they need to explore the ocean dungeon since he can only level up against stronger monsters, which leaves Mukoda a bit scared. Then, he checks Dora's stats, finding out that he gained some levels as well. Fel then tells Mukoda to take a look at his own stats, and when he does, he's shocked to see that he gained quite a few levels this time. Mukoda wonders if he leveled up because of the evil plants, but then realizes that he has a new double exp skill. Shocked, Mukoda wonders where he got the skill from, and recalls that the entitled Sky Brats wanted him to level up so they could have more treats. Enraged, he swears to chew them out for toying with his skills the next time they call him. The following day, Mukoda and the group head out to a wide, open field to test Sui's newly awakened Giganticize ability. Once they arrive, Mukoda calls out to Sui, who hops out of his bag in his usual cheerful way. After Sui emerges, Mukoda asks him to give his new power a try. Before doing anything, Sui warns everyone to back up and keep their distance. Dora scoffs, thinking Sui is overestimating how large he's actually going to get, but Mukoda insists it's better to stay careful, especially since none of them know what kind of effect this ability might have. Once everyone steps back, Sui starts inflating in front of them like a balloon. As they watch, the group feels stunned as Sui becomes bigger than Godzilla himself. Even Fel is shocked since he has never seen a slime so big, so Mukoda thinks Sui must be something truly special. Fel also finds Sui's massive growth strange, especially considering he's only 3 months old. That makes Mukoda question whether all the otherworldly junk Sui has been eating from his online shop might have caused some kind of evolution in his body. Meanwhile, Sui happily bounces around, thrilled with how strong he's become. Everyone panics and tells Sui to calm down, so he finally shrinks back to his normal size. Sui then tells them that he can shift to any size as long as it's between the gigantic and normal range. Dora praises the slime for its talent, and Sui jumps on top of Mukoda's bag, saying that it loves fitting inside it. After Sui's test, Mukoda decides to make some lunch for everyone. He takes out his kitchen table before cutting some fresh okra. Then, he takes out some pre-cooked rice and meat boxes and plates a simple dish with the okra and some eggs. Despite the dish's simplicity, everyone digs in. Fel complains about the lack of exquisite flavors, but Dora thinks the dish tastes good enough on its own. Meanwhile, Sui enjoys the taste of fried eggs on top. Once Fel finishes his serving, he asks Mukoda for more meat for the next one. Then, Dora and Sui return for more, so Mukoda reminds them to leave some for him as well. A little while later, they bring back the quest monsters to the Adventurers Guild. There, the butcher, Horace, inspects the Cyclops meat and feels surprised that they killed the monster without damaging its corpse. Goran asks him how long it'll take to process the whole monster, so he tells him it'll take 1 day. Goran then tells Mukoda he'll get the quest rewards ready, and and Horace suggests exploring the city while he waits. Mukoda agrees, mentioning that he also wants to pick up some proper utensils to finally replace his cheap plastic ones. He asks the two locals for any good shops nearby, so Gorin gives him a map of his personal favorites. With the map in hand, Mukoda first visits the Ida Trading Company. The shop's owner is a shrewd businessman who greedily eyes Mukoda's pockets after learning he's an rank adventurer. Afterward, Mukoda heads to the Severy workshop, where he finds useful enhanced utensils created with magic. Once he's done shopping there, he heads over to the Dovan workshop, which sells high-quality, elegant utensils for guests. Later that night, Mukoda returns home with a giant pile of new kitchenware. Although the utensils cost him over 150 gold coins, he thinks the price is worth it for the utensils' quality. Behind, Fel gets upset, so Mukoda asks him if something is wrong. Fel tells him that he wants to enter a dungeon, though Mukoda can't help but question where that sudden desire even came from. Fel explains that it's been a while since he fought any strong enemy, so he thinks he'll get rusty by relaxing too much. Shocked, Mukoda wonders why he changed his mind about going to the sea. He asks Fel if he doesn't want to eat any more sea serpents or leviathans, so Fel tells him that he'd rather pick the dungeon over the sea. Even so, Mukoda tries to steer Fel toward going to the sea instead, but the crafty Fenrir immediately seeks backup from the others. Dora and Sui both take Fel's side, leaving Mukoda with no real choice but to give in. Still, he warns Fel that they'll need to take on a few quests first, since it's going to take him several days to prepare all the food they'll need inside the dungeon. Fel agrees to wait, but only if Mukoda cooks him some meat for dinner. The next day, Mukoda visits Horace, who tells him that the meat is ready. He also explains that the guild doesn't have money to pay Mukoda for the monster parts at the moment, since they're occupied with another problem. Mukoda doesn't mind, but asks him what the guild is struggling with. Horace explains that an orc settlement has suddenly appeared near the city's forest, but most of their adventurers' parties are exploring, so there's no one left to kill the orcs. Gorin asks Mukoda if he can take on another request from them and slay the orcs. Mukoda asks Fel and the others if they want to actually do it. Since the monsters don't mind getting some extra meat, Mukoda accepts Gorin's request. Gorin then takes Mukoda to meet a C-rank party that accepted their quest as well. As they enter the room, he introduces Mukoda to Shadow Warrior, whose leader, Alonso, gets up to greet him. Alonso mentions that even though he has heard of all the rumors about Mukoda, he still feels amazed to see his Fenrir in person. Mukoda smiles, but tells him that Dora and Sui are equally important to him during all their adventures. As Alonso learns about his familiar's abilities, he feels confident that they can clear the orc horde with his help. Once everyone is ready to leave, Mukoda asks Gorin where the orcs are. Gorin explains that the orc spot is actually a day's walk away, which surprises him, since Mukoda is planning to leave town soon. He asks Gorin if he can use his familiars to transport everyone quickly. Soon, Mukoda shows the Shadow Warrior his living bouncy castle, Sui, whose giant size is enough to carry all of them. Once the parties get on top of all the beasts, Mukoda says goodbye to Gorin, and they all rush towards the orc settlement at Mach speed. In just a few hours, they reach the marked spot, but only after giving the poor party members a severe case of motion sickness. Mukoda points to the orc settlement and asks how many there are, so Fel sniffs the air. He tells him that there are around 200 orcs present at the scene, so he can handle them with Dora and Sui. Mukoda turns around towards Shadow Warrior and tells them to just look out for any stray orcs that escape while his murder machines annihilate their families. Although the party feels skeptical, they let Mukoda's familiars go ahead on their own. Then, Mukoda takes out his mithril sword to prepare while the monsters charge towards the orcs. Fel begins the attack by creating earth spikes that pierce through some orcs, while Dora blasts some others with a fireball. Sui then starts gunning them all down with his mini slime machine guns, leaving the Shadow Warrior amazed by everyone's speed. Watching their stunned reactions, Mukoda internally thinks he feels the same way as they. Soon, one of the blasts knocks an orc their way, so Mukoda gets ready to fight it. Even though he has fought stronger monsters in the dungeon, Mukoda feels scared of the brutish orc running towards him. Still, he chops off the monster's arm before piercing through his body with his sword. As the orc falls, Mukoda celebrates his kill, but suddenly, another orc hits him from behind. The orc quickly walks towards him for another hit, but Mukoda distracts it with his stone bullet spell and jumps behind it and finishing it off. After defeating the orcs, Mukoda looks at Shadow Warrior, who has also cleaned up the remaining stragglers. Since all the orcs are down, Mukoda puts them into his storage bag. Then, they all walk to regroup with Fel and the others, shocked by the carnage they just unleashed. To change the topic, Mukoda suggests having lunch before they head back to the guild. A little while later, he finishes preparing a giant pile of juicy burgers. Although the members of Shadow Warrior have never eaten burgers before, they instantly fall in love with the food after a single bite. All of them hungrily devour the food, thinking that their time spent in the quest was all worth it. Even Fel walks over, feeling smug that someone else is appreciating his 5-star food. After lunch, everyone heads back to the Adventurers Guild, surprising Goran with their quick speed. Alonso explains that their success was mostly due to Mukoda, feeling guilty that he's giving them so much of the reward money. Mukoda doesn't mind sharing the money with them, so Alonso accepts. He tells Mukoda that their party will soon visit another dungeon, so they shake hands to part ways. Later that night, Mukoda decides to cook up a feast in the big kitchen since it's his last day staying in the city. After placing the order for all the ingredients, Sui becomes curious about the large amount of salt Mukoda is using. Mukoda explains that he's planning to make a salt-baked dinner, which makes Sui wonder how that even works. Delighted by his interest, Mukoda tells Sui he can help him prepare the bake. Once Sui joins him, Mukoda rubs a slab of meat with some garlic. Then, he sprinkles on some black pepper before separating some egg yolks and whites into 2 bowls. After getting the egg whites, he pours the salt into the bowl before putting in some fresh rosemary. Once everything is inside, Mukoda mixes everything into one mixture. Then, he puts away the egg whites before covering the meat slab with a bunch of boiled lettuce. While covering the meat, Mukoda explains to Sui that the lettuce will help balance out all the salt he's using. He then spreads out the egg white and salt mixture onto a cooking tray and puts the meat on top. After adding the meat, Mukoda covers it on all sides with the salt and egg mixture to prepare it for baking. Watching the white mixture, Sui feels excited, so Mukoda tells him that the salt will trap all of the meat's flavor while it cooks. Then, he finally puts the meat inside his preheated oven to start baking. After a long while, Mukoda takes out the roasted meat slab, which has turned brown from the cooking. While waiting for the meat to cool down, Mukoda decides to make a delicious sauce with the egg yolks. As Sui celebrates his favorite eggs, Mukoda adds a bunch of mustard to the eggs. Then, he asks Sui to blend it together, so the happy slime whirs it all in an instant. With the sauce ready, Mukoda tells Sui to call Dora and Fel for their special dinner. Soon, the 2 meat enthusiasts walk over and get confused by the strange white meat chunks in front of them. Suddenly, Mukoda starts whacking the meat with a stick, which cracks the outer salt and lettuce layer to reveal the perfectly roasted meat inside. Seeing the tender and juicy meat, everyone starts drooling for their upcoming feast. Mukoda starts slicing the roast meat into strips, explaining how he cooked their dinner to the latecomers. After plating together all the strips, Mukoda pours the egg sauce all over them. Once the food is ready, everyone sits down to eat. Fel takes a bite first and enjoys the perfect salty taste. Dora thinks that the meat is also perfectly soft, while Sui enjoys his beloved egg sauce. After watching everyone's reactions, Mukoda also takes a bite, instantly approving the meat's superb taste. He feels glad that he wrapped the meat in lettuce since the salty taste feels perfectly balanced out. In a short while, everyone finishes their food, so Mukoda orders some deluxe desserts to finish their feast. He gets a whole strawberry shortcake for Fel, while ordering delicious sundaes for Dora and a chocolate cake for Sui. As everyone cheers, Mukoda tells them all to dig in as a reward for their hard work. The next day, Mukoda finally receives his quest rewards for all the evil plants and cyclops he hunted. As Mukoda puts the money away, Goran asks him if he's headed to the sea. Mukoda nods, so Goran tells him to visit their small town anytime he wants. He smiles and accepts their offer before leaving town, headed towards the sea with his rowdy bunch of eaters. After a few days, they finally reach the ocean. Watching the salty shoreline, Mukoda sighs in nostalgia. Fel wonders why he's so excited for a massive puddle of salt water, so Mukoda tells him that he has many pleasant memories about the beach back on his world. Still, Fel thinks that the sea is just a giant pool of ocean monster meat, so Mukoda stops him from hunting. Then, he tells Fel to take him to the ocean town of Berlind. After some time, they enter the town, where Mukoda finds the markets completely empty. One of the shopkeepers there explains that a kraken has been terrorizing their shore for the past few days, so no one can go out to fish. Afterward, Mukoda visits the city's Adventurers Guild, where he meets the guild master, called Marx. Marx laughs, surprised to see all of Mukota's powerful familiars. He explains that Gorin informed him about his arrival and takes Mukota to his private room. There, he wonders if Mukota knows their town's situation. Mukota nods, so Marx explains that they tried to hire a B-rank party to take out the Kraken. However, they were too scared of the monster's power and refused to accept the job. Knowing that Mukota isn't a rank adventurer, he wonders if he can take care of the job for him. Before Mukota can decide, Fell accepts the job in his place, since his greedy belly requires Kraken meat. Surprised, Marx wonders if Krakens are even edible. Fell eagerly confirms that they are, so he hesitantly accepts his word. Mukota tells Marx he'll head out for the mission soon, but he asks about the Merchants Guild since he needs a place to store all his goods. Marx agrees to write a letter of introduction to the Merchants Guild for him, and soon, Mukota gets a gigantic mansion, even larger than his previous one. Inside, he gets a nice view of the ocean straight from his bedroom, so he thinks the high price is worth it. After that, Sui and Dora head outside to explore every part of the house, so Mukota takes the opportunity to start preparing dinner while they enjoy themselves. After going to the mansion's kitchen, he starts ordering some ingredients to make hayashi rice. After ordering the spices and ingredients, Mukota picks Minotaur meat to serve the dish with. First, he slices the meat into strips before chopping some mushrooms and onions. Then, he sautés the onions in a heated pan before adding salt and pepper to the meat. After that, Mukota cooks the meat for a bit and adds the mushrooms to it. Then, he adds water to the pot and skims off any slag. After cooking the meat a bit more, he tears some chunks of roux and adds them to the mixture. After mixing the roux with the meat, he pours the gravy all over a plate of rice and garnishes it with some boiled broccoli and cream. Once the food is done, he calls Sui and Dora to come inside and eat. After everyone gathers at the dinner table, Mukota explains that he made a dish similar to the curry rice they ate last time. Soon, all of them dig in, and Fell thinks that the gravy is great. As always, he thinks that Mukota should have added more meat. Meanwhile, Dora appreciates the unique taste of the mushroom gravy, while Sui enjoys how tender the thin meat is. Watching them eat, Mukota smiles before tasting his own serving. He instantly falls in love with the dish, thinking that the broccoli perfectly complements the gravy and the meat's taste. Soon, everyone finishes their first portion, so Mukota quickly replaces it with another full plate. After dinner, Fell and Dora lie down from exhaustion. However, Sui asks Mukota for some cake. Mukota wonders how he could still eat more after all the food he just stuffed, but suddenly, Fell and Dora also start demanding dessert. Mukota knows that they need to hunt a Kraken soon, so he indulges their request. Excited, the monsters start demanding all the desserts they love, and he soon orders them. As they begin eagerly digging into the desserts, Mukota reminds them that he's going to give them a bath afterward to wash all the sugar off of them. The next morning, Mukota heads out to the city's harbor, which is completely peaceful. Since the Kraken lives farther out in the sea, Mukota asks Fell how he plans to take care of it from the land. Fell explains that the last time he fought a Kraken, he simply used lightning magic from the top of a cliff to strike it down. Mukota points out that there's no cliff near this beach. Fell also realizes he's right, so he starts thinking of a strategy to find the Kraken. Mukota remains silent, but starts screaming at him for acting like he'd handle the guild master's request like some sea monster professional. Fell refuses to accept his mistake and claims that he can defeat the Kraken if it appears in front of him. So Mukota thinks about getting a boat. However, when he asks all the sailors to lend him their ship, they all refuse him with a bunch of excuses. While Mukota and Fell wonder what to do, they find Sui and Dora effortlessly playing out in the sea. This gives Mukota an idea, and he asks Sui to inflate to his giant size. Soon, they all ride on Sui's giant back and sail out into the open sea. While surfing, Mukota feels grateful that he's got his own living all-terrain vehicle. After sailing out a good distance, Mukota wonders when the Kraken will appear. Fell tells him that he can sense the monster's presence, so they should soon encounter it. Surprised, Mukota tells Fell to guard Sui at all costs. Then, Dora wonders if the Kraken is getting closer, so Fell tells him it's almost there. Soon, the water starts bubbling under them, and Fell warns everyone to be on guard. Finally, the Kraken's giant tentacles appear above the water, shocking everyone. As Fell tells everyone to feast their eyes, Mukota gets terrified of another huge monster wrapped in the Kraken's tentacles. Fell explains that the other monster is a sea serpent, which is fighting a battle against the Kraken. Soon, the Kraken and serpent start fighting each other, completely ignoring Mukota's group floating nearby. dry. Fel tells Dora to take care of the sea serpent, saying that he'll take out the kraken on his own. Dora agrees and releases a lightning bolt, with Fel immediately following up by firing a powerful thunder sphere of his own. When the attacks explode into the sea monsters, the smoke prevents the party from seeing what happened. After the smoke clears, both monsters fall into the sea before floating up lifelessly. While Mukoda feels stunned that they smoked those gigantic monsters so easily, Fel explains that their tangled bodies made it easier for the electricity to kill them. Meanwhile, Sui feels upset since he didn't get any action, so Mukoda tells him he's got another job for him. Soon, Sui lifts up the dead monsters for Mukoda, but he struggles to untangle their heavy bodies. Then, Fel notices something else behind them, so he warns Sui to get away from the monsters. As soon as Sui backs off, an even bigger sea monster rushes out of the water to eat their prey. While Mukoda and the others scream at Sui to run away, the big slime gets mad at the monster for stealing his precious food. He quickly fires his water jet at the massive creature, instantly ending its free trial of life. After the red monster falls dead, Sui celebrates his victory. Fel notes that no more sea monsters are approaching them, so Mukoda decides to scan the new one. As he scans the monster, he finds out that it's called Aspidochelone. Although Mukoda feels confused by the giant worm's weird name, he notes that its meat is top quality. He wonders if his skill is showing the meat quality because of a level up, and stores all of the precious S-rank monsters away. Back in the city, Marx feels surprised that Mukoda has already gone out to hunt, since he expected him to prepare for a few more days. He then realizes that Mukoda's party is already back, so he asks them what happened. Mukoda explains the situation, and Marx feels truly amazed that Mukoda's group could effortlessly hunt the giant Aspidochelone. Fel starts bragging about his own skills, but Marx wonders how they even went to the sea without his boat. Hearing this, Mukoda wonders if he prepared a boat for them, and he confirms. Marx then gets up to go outside, saying that he can't process the giant sea monsters in the small building. Sometime later, Mukoda pulls out the sea kraken outside the guild's building. While the guild's butchers marvel at the giant corpse, Marx informs them that there are still 2 more monsters to go. Marx warns the butchers to be quick with the meat, and Mukoda asks him for a favor. Marx wonders why Mukoda is giving the kraken to his men, so he tells him that his familiars can't eat so much meat in one day. Then, he announces to the butchers that they'll all eat the kraken together, so they all start to process it quickly. After a long while, the sailors finish skinning the kraken and cutting its meat into cuts. Marx asks Mukoda how to begin cooking, so he tells him to wait for a bit. While the sailors wait, Mukoda goes to a hidden corner to order all his special ingredients. There, orders a few barrels worth of vinegar, mirin, soy sauce, and ginger to pair with the massive amount of kraken meat. Once the sauces are ready, Mukoda wheels the barrels over the sailors, and they all start rubbing the soft meat with the special sauce. After the meat is properly covered with the sauce, Mukoda thinks it's time to cook. Marx points out that they'll need a lot of fuel to cook something this big, so Mukoda tells him he's got it covered. Then, he lobs a fireball at the kraken meat, setting it all on fire. While Marx feels impressed, Fel tells Mukoda that this pathetic flame will take 10 business years to fully cook the giant kraken. He then unleashes his own scorching flame, which cooks the entire thing in a few minutes. Once the kraken is ready, Fel and the others think it smells perfect. Soon, Marx tells all his men to feast on their spoils of war, so they all start hacking away at the kraken and plating their own portions. Mukoda brings over some meat for his own party before taking out some mayo shichimi to add some special flavors. After adding the sauces to their plates, he finally serves the meat to everyone. While his familiars chow down on the tasty feast, Mukoda tells Marx and his men to try out the special sauce as well. While the uncultured men fall in love with the meat's heavenly taste, Mukoda enjoys his own skewer. As everyone eats, the sailors thank Mukoda for defeating the kraken. After praising him for restoring their livelihoods, the sailors all surround Mukoda to have a good time. Sometime later, Fel and the others go to sleep with a full belly. Meanwhile, the sailors all set out to sea, full of energy from their hearty meal. As they sail away, Mukoda praises the men's incredible stamina for going out fishing despite the exhausting party they just had. Marx thinks that such stamina is only expected of a sailor, and tells Mukoda that he'll have a great time exploring their fish market once the men return. That was episode 11. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.